Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace, episode 257 on Sifted Games at sifted.net. This is the flagship show of Sifted Games. We're going to be here for the next couple hours talking about the biggest games and stories from the gaming industry over the last week. Alongside me to do that is Matthew Kyle. What's up, Matt? Happy Tuesday to you, my friend.
Thank you. Happy allergy season, too. Jesus.
It's been brutal. And here's the thing, so if you have allergies, when you move to California, and I have bad seasonal allergies. Like, I used to have to take an allergy pill every day when I lived on the East Coast for like 5 months straight. When you move here, your allergies go away. I never have to take allergy medicine here, except for this week. I've had a bottle of Zyrtec for like 11 years. In fact, it's probably expired, and I should probably replace it.
Definitely expired, yeah.
But I never have to take it out here, and this week has been brutal. Like, I woke up with a sore throat, and I was like, oh, no. I'm like, maybe I got the Rona, and I'm not quite vaccinated. No, it was my allergies. I usually don't have too many allergy problems, certainly not compared to up north. But, up north, I get it. My allergies kick in as soon as I step out of the car. Yeah. But it's just been suddenly, it's been cold and weird here for like a few weeks. And now it's warm this week. And so all the plants are like, it's spring. Everybody burst. And like this, I don't take allergy medication much anymore, but I took Claritin D a couple hours ago because I'm like, otherwise this whole show is just going to be me sneezing constantly. Yeah, or sniffling.
I was literally sneezing so hard I was having trouble playing Biomutant for any length of time, without having to pause and stop and sneeze. That's been my day.
It is beautiful here, though.
Oh, it's gorgeous, but that's why it sucks for allergies right now.
Yeah, it does suck. The last 2 days, we finally got LA weather back. It has been cold here all year, and just finally these last 2 days, my niece was actually in town this past weekend, and the weather went perfect on Sunday, just in time for her to hang out with us. But it is nice walking outside and feeling the perfect 75-degree temperatures and the breeze.
Yeah, when we say cold, we mean 68.
Right.
Well, it's like LA
pretty cold. It got down to 40-something for a whole month there. So overnight
a couple times, yeah. But
But
there were just points where I was like, why is it May in Los Angeles and I need to unjacket? That's weird. That's not a thing. That's not what I moved here for.
Yeah. But anyway, the weather here is beautiful just in time for E3. E3's coming
it'll go back to the weird overcast shit that it does for every E3. Every E3 is I even said that to someone when it was all dark and kind of gloomy last week. I was like, this is E3 weather. This is a month early. This is supposed to be what it's like during E3. So everyone's like, oh, downtown LA is so dark and gray. It's like, no, it just looks like that when you're here.
Yeah, but E3 is coming up fast. It's in 2.5, 3 weeks here.
Was it June 13th for the Microsoft conference, as they said today?
Yeah. So we're about 2.5, 3 weeks away from E3. Getting excited. As we get closer to the show, we'll start doing E3 previews. We'll start hyping it up and start talking about it a lot more. Not quite there yet.
Nothing's coming out.
Yeah. One thing we do need to update you guys on, next week's show will not be live on Tuesday. Matt has something that he has to do and he can't get out of. So the show is Wednesday of next week. And then the week after that, Matt, you're out completely, correct?
No.
No? I thought no. That's the end of June actually.
End of June, I'm out completely, but I think that's going to time out with you being out completely.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, because after E3, I'm going to take off for about a week and a half to finally go home and see my family. I am 5 days away from full vaccination at this point. It will have been 2 weeks since my second shot. I'm very excited about that. Really excited about going home and seeing my family for the first time in forever. So anyway, hope you guys are all doing great as well. Hope you guys are all getting vaccinated, getting back to normal life. It's been crazy watching sporting events over the last week and seeing full arenas. Like the Penguins game last night, they had 10,000 people at the game. And it started kind of last week, and it was very shocking at first to see. But now I've kind of, I'm back. I'm used to it. It's great to see people back out, getting back to life and all that kind of stuff.
We did our first in-person movie night for our movie night group since February last year.
Yeah.
On Saturday.
Yep.
We watched Superman, the real Superman, Christopher Reeve. That was really good. And then the next day, some people came over and played board game. Like just came over, and we played board game. That's the thing we can do now. Look at that.
Do you demand the Vax card when people come over, Matt?
Nah, I know who isn't. Actually, today I got a message from the place I got my vaccination, and they're like, "Oh, we're offering like just open walk-ins, no appointment today until like 2:30 if you know anyone who needs them." And I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
Like everyone I know has at least one shot by this point.
Yeah, most people I know. Yeah,
I can't think of anyone, at least not anyone in LA, that doesn't have at least one shot so far.
Yep, it's pretty awesome to see life getting slowly back to normal. Still, obviously, feeling for people in other places like India, obviously, even Canada.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's not remotely over.
Yeah, even Canada is still bad. Like, if you've been watching...
Canada is a disaster. Canada is nasty right now.
Yeah. I mean, if you've been watching the hockey games from Canada, their arenas are still empty. There's nobody in them still. So we don't want to forget that there are people around the world who don't
No, definitely Canada. I mean, Canada's having a very hard time. The UK is on the edge of a hard time. India is the worst case scenario imaginable.
Insane.
Brazil is not far behind. Like worldwide, we are not done with this at all.
Yep.
And also, let's not forget that part of the reason the United States is so far ahead in this regard is because we kind of hoarded a lot of vaccinations for ourselves. We hoarded
almost all of it.
But that's sort of what we do.
We are starting to send it out though, which is good.
And we're gonna have to really step that up because the other thing is like it's bad for everyone. I mean, obviously, it's worse for
we need everybody to get better. Yeah,
right. But it's like the more time you let like this thing circulate among huge populations, like in India, the more likely you're going to get some weird variant that's going to be able to ignore the vaccines, and we're going to be right back to square one.
Yeah.
So it's in all of humanity's best interest to take care of everybody as best we can.
And not just in this case, let's be honest, in general.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But something like this really brings it to
baby
the
steps,
forefront.
Like let's start with a pandemic and then talk about maybe not bankrupting yourself just because you got sick once.
Yep. So anyway, here we are for episode 257. If you're listening to this show out on the wilds of the podcast space and you'd like to support us, head to patreon.com/sifted. That's SIFTD without the E. If you pledge $4 or more per month, and that's it, you get all our content early. In a lot of cases, a week early, but in most cases, 4 days early. And if you can't do that and you're watching us on YouTube, down in the description, there are instructions on how to help us with Twitch Prime. It's very easy. Once you connect your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, it's literally a one-click thing that you have to do every 30 days. We really appreciate it. It costs you nothing, provided that you are already an Amazon Prime member, which it seems at this point, Matt, everybody is.
Yeah, pretty much.
Their numbers are insane, how many people they have subscribing to that. It's just amazing the business that Amazon has built.
Not going to translate to Luna, though. Like, just let's,
I think that's safe to say.
Let's not fool ourselves.
Before we get into the show, I want to thank the people who have subscribed with Twitch Prime Live while we've been up on Twitch. Corey Film, thank you for Twitch Prime. We appreciate it, man. It's really awesome. Gerzilla, thank you. 26 months for Gerzilla. You are on quite a streak, my friend. Thank you for remembering to do that every month, and that is a pain in the ass. I get it. I know some people have set like calendar alerts up in their cell phone so they get alerted when they need to resubscribe. It appears you may have done that, Gerzilla. If you did, thank you, man. That's really awesome. Let's see. We're in the middle or the late part of the month, so a lot of people have already resubscribed at this point. Thanks to you guys who did it early on in the show. Speaking of which, let's get on with the show. We're going to kick things off with, undoubtedly, the biggest game of the week. We've been doing that lately. We used to save the biggest game for the last topic of the show, but we started switching it up and putting it on the top. That game is Biomutant, a game that has been long in development. At least 5 years it's been in development. I mean, we've known about it for like 4 years now. Does that sound right, Matt?
Sounds about right, yeah.
I mean, it was delayed like 2 different times. As it turns out, I didn't do a lot of research on the game until I was preparing to talk about it here on GameFace.
It's one of those games where it's like you saw the trailer and then like you forgot about it for like 2 years, and then they showed something else. You're like, oh yeah, that thing. I guess that's still alive. It's like,
well, the first trailer was really interesting, and I will say this: the final game doesn't remind me a whole lot of that first trailer.
No, although it's in there.
Yeah.
Like the events of the trailer occur at the beginning of the game, just in a much less interesting way.
Yeah. Like the creatures that ended up in the final game aren't really like the creatures that were in the first trailer. There was wasn't there like a duck or something in the first one, like an anamorphous duck?
I mean, look, the world is very large. I'm willing to accept that those things might be in there somewhere, and I just haven't seen them yet. But because the thing didn't go live till this morning. Like, I don't know what happened. For whatever reason, this game didn't go live until 7 a.m. Pacific this morning.
Oh, have you just been playing since this morning?
Yeah, so okay. I played 3 hours this morning just to taste it. But normally games go live at 9 p.m., which is midnight Eastern.
Yeah.
The night before, and this one for some reason didn't go up till this morning, so I only got to play it for 3 hours this morning.
Well, Matt, I will say this, as someone who has played a lot more than that, I feel like what I experienced in the first few hours is pretty much what I'm still experiencing at this point.
Yeah, I'm getting the impression, and I know the review said that too, but I'm definitely feeling that even already. I'm like, oh, I think I've seen everything you got.
Yeah,
already.
I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but its biggest detriment to me is that it does get repetitive very quickly. I think that's its biggest problem. And when you're talking about a game like this, that's kind of a fatal flaw, to be perfectly honest with you. And just to get you up to speed on what Biomutant is, because in all honesty, for the longest time, none of us did know what it was, Matt. I remember we would ask each other, what exactly is this game? And the reason we couldn't figure it out is because, and even the developers have said this, by the way, Matt, they have taken elements of all the most popular action games and action RPGs from the last, and I would say even going back 7 or 8 years. This game does feel dated in some ways. And mash them all into one game. So it's kind of like Breath of the Wild mixed with the Batman Arkham games, mixed with, even a little bit of Neo in there, a little bit of Devil May Cry in there, because the combat, you have both a gun and a sword. It's Kung Fu angled.
Yeah, there's a lot of you can see where they're drawing from on a lot of this stuff, except the problem is that all of it is a little watered down. It's all kind of simplified versions of things other games have done better.
Yeah.
Mixed together in I'll say this game's janky.
Yeah.
The first time I moved the character forward with a stick, I was like, oh no. It has that kind of classic Eurojank.
Yeah, it really does.
Thing where where the character feels like it's moving faster than its walks, run cycle should let it move. It feels like you're skating along in a way that is not matching up to the world you're being shown somehow. And the combat, the combat has no impact. The combat has very little oomph to it. There's no, when you hit something, it doesn't really feel like you hit it. If it wasn't popping up little comic book zap pow stuff, you wouldn't barely even know you were making contact most of the time. There's a lot of nuance to what you can do in combat, but none of it really feels satisfying.
Matt, the combat feels god awful. We'll get to that. Let's talk about the story first to kind of set up the game for people. It is set on, at least on a human planet. I don't know if it's ever established if it's actually Earth.
I mean, judging by the car makes and models, it was Earth.
It seems to be Earth, yeah.
It seems like the apocalypse of a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah. So,
the human world ended and gave rise to all these intelligent mutant animals, and now those animals' world is also ending.
Yeah,
for reasons that are fairly vague, but seem to involve a tree.
Yeah, they eventually spell it out. There's a tree called the Tree of Life that kind of gives life to the whole planet. And there are these 4 world eaters that are eating the roots of the tree. And so it's your task to, the first thing you do is you...
Here you have your Breath of the Wild comparison.
Right. And the way the world is laid out is also very Breath of the Wild, the design of the game.
But just okay, there's 4 beasts that you have to go to the corners of the map to kill and team up with different tribes that are the ones who will help you beat each beast. Okay, yeah, I see where you're going here.
Yeah, and the tribe part is a big deal. If at the first part of the game you choose which of 2 tribes you want to join. One is basically trying to hasten the end of the world. The other one is trying to save the Tree of Life. So you make that choice there. But from what I've seen, Matt, honestly, I don't think there's that much of a difference between which side that you choose.
It doesn't seem to result in particularly different gameplay. I think there's a bunch of tribes in the game, and
You
some
still
are
fight
aligned
the
to the
bosses,
light.
for example, even if
Yeah,
you're
and some
trying
of them
to
are aligned
end
to
the
dark,
world.
but like the morality system seems to be almost incidental.
Yeah, there's these fairies that sit on your shoulder. One's black and one's white, and so you're kind of walking down this morality trail, trying to decide whether you're going to be good or bad. I haven't seen a lot of influence on that at all. There are
it
some.
seems to just like depend on whether people will tell you secrets sometimes.
Yep. And a lot
but
of that depends on your stats. So right now in the B-roll, we're checking out character creation, which I will say one thing I really like about this game is how the character creation works. So you see there's that like scale on the left there. You use the analog stick to kind of nudge it in the direction you want your character to be. And then you'll see your character actually change in real time and kind of morph. So if you choose, for instance, I played with like a commando who is strong and powerful and good with guns. If you choose like the strength rating, like leaning towards the strength rating, you'll see your character's muscles get bigger. If you choose to go kind of the psi option or the intelligence option, their head will get bigger. And as you do this on these little meters, you see your character model change in real time depending on sort of those
although
settings.
I will say you can upgrade your stats pretty easily and substantially every time you level up. So really that screen, you should focus more on how you want the character to look than what the stats are.
I mean, I'll just be honest with you. One of the other big issues with this game is that it's completely unbalanced. It only takes like 5 hours before you can just destroy everything with very little thought. And the one thing I would say about this too is that the RPG elements in this game are a lot heavier than most action RPGs. There are so many systems running under the hood. It's overkill, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, because you got the stats, and then you've got stats on those stats, and then you've got the perks, and then you've got your combat abilities, and then you've got that go per style and per type of weapon, and then you've got your psi abilities, and then you've got you got your biomutation abilities that like change how the character looks and plays in that regard. Like it's just, and then you've got resistances to different like elemental types, and it's just systems on systems.
Yeah, which is another way it's like Breath of the Wild. There are parts of the world that you'll go into that will be toxic, and there's like 4 different ways it can be toxic. And if you don't have the right armor and the right sort of alignment set up, you will eventually die, just like Breath of the Wild. However, I will say again that it's hard to die from that stuff, because it's just your character eventually becomes so overpowered compared to what's happening in the game that you can wipe out enemies really quickly. So you don't even have to spend a lot of time in those sort of danger zones, so to speak.
Yeah, and you also you pick a class.
Yep.
Which gives you another set of skills to buy. I picked Saboteur.
Yeah, I picked the Commando, as I said earlier, because I wanted to be equal with swords and with guns. But then I'm not as good in conversations with, convincing people. And again, I haven't seen that a lot of that really matters either, to be honest with you.
Yeah, although the convincing people thing is also weird, because if you fail, you lose stat points, which should give you an idea of how cheap stat points are to do.
They're disposable,
Yeah. So, and also if you don't like that, you can just save and reload until you get a success, because it's just rolling dice under the hood.
Yep.
So
let's talk about the combat now. So I agree with you 1,000%. It feels awful. The problem is it doesn't feel. There is no feel.
There's no feeling. It's just it's like smashing cardboard characters into each other.
And I think the biggest
even when you fight like a giant thing that's like 10 times your size, like there's no heft to any of it.
There's no reaction. The animation in this game is terrible. That is the root of the problem and a lot of problems in this game. Just the animations. Look, crazy things are happening. Like, you can get really good at this game to where you get into combat, and if you watch somebody doing it, you're like, damn, you could do some crazy stuff in this game.
There's like cool, like the parry system is a cool idea, and then like if you get the counter from the parry, you can then hit like left bumper and pop them up and do air juggles and then smash them down into the other enemy. Like there's a lot of stuff in there, but it all feels like nothing. It all there's no.
It feels like you're attacking like a paper mache animal or whatever. There's no reaction from the enemies, or very little reaction from the enemies when you hit them with either a sword or the gun. The gun, they just run right at you, like it hasn't hit them at all. And
I can't remember who said this, but like it was some other game that somebody maybe it was Sessler, but somebody described it as like a game similar. It was a similar thing where like the combat just didn't have enough feedback, and they said it's like having sex with a Kevlar condom on. You're going through the motions, but you can't feel anything.
That's a good way to describe the game.
And I thought of that line when I was playing this game.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know, like everything that feels good about God of War's combat. Imagine the opposite of that.
It really is like the polar opposite, and it is a shame because as you can see, you're constantly getting like new doohickeys and new attachments, and they do make a difference. It's like you'll get like a little thing that you attach to your gun, and all of a sudden your gun is like shoots lightning bolts, and that part of the game I really like. And you can like flip around and access that and change that stuff real easy and fast, and like they got that part right. It's just I don't know, like it's just like it needs more of like what a lot of those other like God of War does it, and Tsushima did it. It's like things where like if I hit a guy hard, do that slow down thing. That's that split second slowdown thing where I feel the impact of the hit, or like give me more feedback on the controller vibration or something. Like it needs
I just
sound
feel
effects
like I'm
and
not doing
animation.
anything.
It's really what it is. Like the sound effects for landing blows sound terrible,
there's
and the enemies
there.
Just don't react to being struck like they should. There's just a disconnect.
All the combat is like I don't know if there's ever been a combat system in a game that Anemic described better. Like it's just not, and it feels like you could get it there. Like it feels like if you beefed up this and like added a little feedback on this, like I feel like you could get it there. Like they've got something here. It's just horrendously unsatisfying to play.
It also needs a different wrapper. I hate the art in this game. I like the idea where you have like these animals with just random like parts from former human society slapped onto them.
I like the aesthetic.
They look terrible.
I think it's ugly.
It's
ugly.
It's
an ugly game.
Yes, it is ugly. Like, and I'm not saying like.
I mean, from like a technical graphics perspective, like especially when they're close up on these things, you're like, oh, the fur shading is offensive. Almost.
Which is worse, this or Resident Evil Village, the fur shading. That's a close one.
I think this because like the fur shading in Resident Evil doesn't look great, but you can kind of get away with it as like an aesthetic the way Bloodborne does.
Yeah.
This though, like especially the closer shots of the fur creatures, like it feels archaic. Like it feels like last gen fur shading.
Yeah.
Like there's a couple shots in here that a couple closer shots in this that would not have been not at home on a 360. It's just a lot of the game feels weirdly primitive.
Yeah, the world can be very pretty though. There's some times where you'll step out onto a vista and I'm like, wow, that's beautiful. But then there's a cutscene that shows one of the characters up close, and I'm just saying.
Yeah, and you're just like, what?
Did
you even alias that
so
guy?
Bad.
Like, what is going on? Yeah,
they're so ugly. Like everything in this world is ugly. I could not create a character that, to my standards, was aesthetically pleasing. I still hate my character the way my character looks. He looks like, I don't even know. It's like E.T. crossed with Yoda or some crap.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like the art. Like, a lot of the characters you interact with are just ugly. Like, I don't like looking at them. And the cutscenes, they're not even really cutscenes. They're more just like they stand there while this... And let's talk about the narrator in a second.
Yeah, this is one of the strangest ways of presenting character interaction I have ever seen.
But all the characters you interact with just look awful. Like, look away from the TV awful. And then the story is told by this narrator... And the narrator is even more intrusive than what you've got in like Super Giants games, which does it perfectly here.
And this feels like that's what they're trying to emulate.
Yep.
But they're not.
Oh, it just falls on his face. Oh my gosh, it makes me not want to play the game. He tries to make...
You can turn him off.
Yeah, I know, and I am going to turn him off. But then there's no voice acting or storytelling in the game at all.
Right. And that's the weird... It's like the animal... So the animal's talking kind of a gibberish.
Which also is awful, I would add.
But like, what happens is like, the animal's talking gibberish, and then the narrator tells you what they said.
He translates them, yeah.
But he says it's like... But it's not like it's just narrating what's going on. And it's like the animal goes, and then the narrator says, he says that he doesn't think that I'm just like, why are you telling me that? Like,
and I've read like the lower third with the text in it before he finishes, and it's
this weird way of like, it's a weird way of separating me from the characters and the act. Like, I feel like I never get to know any of these characters or interact with these characters because I'm kept like at arm's length by this narrator. And then they do weird stuff. Like you meet an old like otter or something in a wheelchair, and then you do a flashback to when you were a kid, and the otter is young in the flashback,
and he's Elvis,
and he's like the Fonz or something.
Or Elvis, I can't tell what he's supposed to be.
So his gibberish sounds like it sounds like a weird Elvis sort of like kind of thing. And you're like, what? He's like in blue jeans and a leather jacket, and you're like, who did you kill for that leather jacket exactly?
Yeah, you're an animal wearing a leather jacket.
You're an animal wearing an animal. I don't know. I guess it's just there for whimsy and stuff, but it's like
it's just bad.
Especially early on, it makes me. I just turned into the guy from Futurama. This just raises further questions. Like it's such a weird. It's like it's not like it could have been good weird, but it's more like frustrating weird.
This is like the king of master of all or jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah, there's an element. There's definitely an element of like, oh, you really should have picked a lane. On this game,
or maybe 2 lanes instead of 10.
Yeah. It's like because you can tell even early on, it's like, oh, this game's big. Like this is going to go on for a while.
Yeah, I don't think it's as big as you think. I want it to
go on for a while.
I mean, I've beat the second boss already, and it didn't take me as long as I thought. Now there's you can get distracted and get caught up with side quests.
There's tons of like open world, old school open worldy, collect all the things stuff going on, and like that's and it's like little things like if there's a visual cue that indicates that I've unlocked one of the flags for like fast travel, I can't figure out what it is.
I can't either, but isn't it funny how you pee on the pole to activate the fast travel point?
You do. I mean, you're marking your territory, I guess, but I've activated the same flag multiple times because I can't remember which one. It feels like they should light up or do something. I mean, they're on your map, obviously, but like there's no in-game visual cue that you've already unlocked that part, which I think is extremely strange.
Yeah, the mission objectives become repetitive almost immediately. Literally almost immediately. This is one of the worst games with missions that I've played in a really long time. They're all fetch quests. Almost all of them are fetch quests. And if they're not fetch quests,
everything I've done so far has been. I guess it doesn't get any better.
Yep. And if they're not fetch quests, they're this stupid like color matching puzzle thing that is literally through the whole game. And how easy those are dependent on your stats. But again, I haven't really like bumped up my intelligence or focused on it at all, and they were all just as easy as the combat.
Like intelligence determines how many like moves you get to use during that, but it's like I don't know. So far, I haven't seen anything that required more than 3 moves, and I have never upgraded my intelligence. I have 10 moves to start with.
Yeah, there's a stamina meter in the game, which you know how much I love that. But it's pretty generous. It regenerates quickly, and it's pretty big. At least for my character, it is. I haven't found myself like
I've never run out of the key. Or anything like that. Like even though I dodge all the time because that's just my Dark Souls instincts. But like I've never run out of anything.
Yeah.
Never even come close to dying. It's weird. Like I don't know. Like there's a world in which this was a kind of a pleasant enough B-list game, and I just feel like it missed that train.
Yeah, it's because there aren't many B-list games like this anymore.
No.
And what I was getting at earlier was I didn't really look into this game all that much until I was preparing to talk about it here on GameFace. And what I realized is that the development team is like 20 people. So that explains why it was delayed so many times. I think it also explains, a lot of things in this game, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it explains like the ambition is there, but the execution is not.
But I do agree with you,
it might have been a feature creep problem or something. I mean, in to turn it around, like it's really impressive that like 20 people made this.
It really is. There's no doubt about it. But I had no clue that the team was that small.
Yeah, well, part of it doesn't look like it. When you see like footage of this game, it does not look like a 20-person team. It looks like a AAA effort. Maybe not like in terms of full-on visual stuff, but it doesn't look like a small team indie game or anything.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, I also feel like this has promise. Like, I feel like even if this just had a different look to it, I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more. If they removed the narrator, and I get why they do it. It's a cheap way to tell a story if you're a small team. Like you hire one guy to come in and read everything.
You either have the narrator or have the characters talking to each other.
Right.
Like one or the other. But like, right. Like,
I would err with the characters talking to each other.
Probably, but the way they did it, like feels like you're just wasting my time. Like it feels like the cutscenes take twice as long as they should because I have to listen to the animal talk, and then I have to listen to the narrator interpret what the animal said, and then the animal says another line, and then the narrator talks again. It's just like subtitle the gibberish and call that your interaction. It really starts to grate
on the nerves very quickly. It does not take long, and you can skip it. But it's still annoying. You can
turn the narrator off. You can turn the gibberish off. You can turn all that off. But it's like if your main storytelling conveyance, you feel the need to put off switches on them, you might have a problem.
Yeah.
Like, it's an odd choice.
I do feel for this team a little bit though, because like you said, like you would never dream 20 people made this game.
No.
I mean, the work that they did, it is impressive. But the truth is you're going to charge X amount of dollars for a game like this. It's going to be compared to the other games that are asking that much money for them.
Yeah, like in the end, it's a $60 open world, pushed as a high-end game title. And like, I'm going to go into this expecting something, that I'm going to compare to a Ghost of Tsushima or a God of War, which isn't fair considering it's 20 people versus like 400. But
then the game should be $30.
Yeah, or it should be, I don't know, or you got to narrow the scope somehow so you can polish the parts that you need to polish. The combat in here has potential. I agree. It's a little movement in one direction or the other, and you've got gold. I think you've got something really good.
They're kind of they remind me of Spiders, the team that made this. They're making action RPGs that are just right on the cusp of being something good.
Yeah, this is the action RPG version of Technomancer.
Yeah, yeah.
Technomancer was also an action RPG, but it's like Technomancer was trying to do the BioWare model and was so close it was frustrating.
Yeah.
And this is sort of the same. Like this is a little bit like. Also, I'll say this: in my worst case scenario or not great case scenario, this is kind of what I expect the new Fable to end up being.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I would hope that they would be smart enough to pull back on having so many ideas. I will say this, though. I don't know that I've ever played a game like this, Matt. They have taken all these ideas from these other games and put them all in one game, and somehow it has resulted in a game that doesn't really look or play like pretty much any other game.
Here's the weird thing that I thought. I have played board games like this that took a bunch of ideas from a bunch of other popular games and meshed them together into one board game.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really happen in video games all that often.
Yeah. Usually they'll take one thing and they'll try to make it better. They don't really do any of that with this. They take all these things and none of them are actually as good as the games that they were borrowed from.
Right. But you can see why those were incorporated from the pitch meetings.
Right.
You can see if you imagine what this game is in the heads of the people who made it, that's like a game of the year candidate.
Yeah.
If they nailed everything.
They nail everything. Yeah.
This would have been wow. This would have been like a blow your mind out the back of the theater kind of thing.
But they don't.
But they don't, yeah.
Like the Arkham-style combat. It works like Arkham does. Your character automatically jumps between enemies all willy-nilly. But that drove me crazy.
I've not been frustrated by targeting or anything like that.
I have been. It drove me crazy.
I haven't.
Because you'll have
the guns. More on the guns than the melee. The melee I feel is just far enough back that I don't get blindsided too much. The targeting with the ranged weapons I have a harder time with.
I just don't like how you could have an enemy that's almost dead and you need to land one more hit, and instead of landing that one more hit, your character will just go over to some enemy who hasn't been hit at all yet. And there's no way to stop it in the heat of battle. It just happens. So, it is offset by the fact that the game is exceptionally easy and you'll probably never... I don't know if I've died in this game now that I think about it. Have you?
No.
I don't know what happens.
I'm pretty early. I'm in the run up to the first boss, so I haven't really fought anything.
Oh no.
Really difficult.
I did die in a boss fight, and there was a checkpoint. It allowed me to select a checkpoint, but it is really difficult to die. Out in the open world, again, that's where it's not like Zelda. It was very possible to die in Breath of the Wild. In this game, it's not. It's just not well balanced, and Some people may like that. Like, I could see a kid being able to play this game no problem. And I don't think there's really much content in it that would keep me from recommending it to kids.
Not really. Like, it's not particularly violent. It's not bloody that I've seen. It's not like you're hacking the creatures up and cutting their heads off.
There's no dismemberment or blood or anything like that.
The story is kind of your basic, like, environmental.
And it's a little heavy-handed with the eco stuff.
It's a little Captain Planet in places. Like, what was the big bad corporation that caused all the problems? It's called, like, Toxinol or something like that.
They were dumping sludge into the ocean.
And like, I mean, duh. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but
not like they're wrong, but a lot of it just does, like, a lot of it feels like a throwback in not always a pleasant way.
Yep, unfortunate. It does feel like a game that probably should have come out 4 or 5 years ago, in all honesty. It probably would have been better received by them, but now every game is an action RPG. So you have so many comps to compare games like this to that it just doesn't hold up favorably.
Yeah,
now
it sort of made me think of, like, something like the combat in this is better than this, but that's sort of like Mad Max.
Yeah.
Where it was like, oh, that was... I don't know who's going to find that and think it's amazing, but, like, I see what you're going for. Like, but Mad Max came out about the right time for itself.
Yep. Yeah,
you know, like,
just half a decade too late, I feel like.
Yeah, it was like that. It was right in that expansion where everything was becoming an open world action RPG, and Max had just the right kind of, the car combat. No one really done that in a really kind of crunchy way yet, and they got that. And the fighting was just satisfying enough to keep you going through the whole thing, and it was really big and sprawling to the point that you felt like you got your money's worth, even if you got bored a ways through.
Yeah.
And I feel like if Biomutant had been around that time, because they are incorporating a lot of, like you said, Devil May Cry, like a lot of character action ideas into the combat, especially with the gunplay. The gunplay more so than the melee. The melee is very Arkham inspired. I think the gunplay is very Devil May Cry inspired.
Yep, because it's auto targeting for the most part.
Yeah.
For your melee stuff, it's all auto targeting, and even like the guns have a very healthy auto aim assist. You can and you do need to aim manually a lot of the time, but again, it's so easy. You just kind of just spray and pray, and it just all kind of works out.
And that works pretty well for the most part. But you can see, like, that those things, if they'd been part of a game, back then, like, no one had really done that before.
Yeah. And it has, like, a parry and a counter system, and it has everything. Like, there are...
Dodge, slow-mo when you dodge, like, it's taken straight out of Bayonetta.
Yep, special attacks, and if you chain 4 of them together, you go into this crazy overdrive mode.
And as you get skills together, you can, like, chain ranged with melee and vice versa.
Yeah.
Like, it's all very intertwined, and once you learn how it works, that you can do some cool stuff. You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to, and, like, it doesn't feel good when you do it. It doesn't feel any different when you do it.
You're seeing all this crazy stuff happen on screen, but you feel, like, completely detached from it all.
Yeah.
It's like you're watching somebody else play when you're playing.
I feel like I didn't do it. It feels very autopilot-y in a weird way.
Yeah. The whole game kind of feels that way, in all honesty.
It's just like, and we're probably being more negative than it really is. It's really just sort of like a mediocre game.
Yeah.
Like really average game.
I feel like we've kind of praised it in the right ways, in the ways that it does things well.
I feel like maybe I'm a little harsher than I should be, just because I think it's disappointing. Like, because you can see what it could
be. Yeah.
And I don't want to say, like, oh, you lazy 20-person dev team, you should have worked harder. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, it just didn't come together right, and it sucks because, like, it could have. Like, you can see what this game could have been if it did come together right, and I really like what they were after.
Yeah. If this game were $30, I would recommend it.
Yeah.
That, to me, is the selling point of this game, and that's what it should have been priced at. Even 40, I would be
40 would be fine.
I'd be open to 40. Like, I would be like, if you are a big fan of this genre, then I would pick it up at $40.
Yeah, if you like what this genre is, and you have heard what we and the other reviews have said, and sort of like know what you're getting into, like walking in with your eyes open, like 40 is not a bad price.
But 30 to me would be its sweet spot. I think it would actually do pretty well, and I think that would
30 would be like just about anybody should try it.
And I would think they would make more money. I think they would sell double the copies that they're going to sell at $60.
Well, I have a feeling it'll be 30 or 40 pretty soon.
Yeah, because
although it's selling pretty well, apparently.
Is it? Its aggregate right now is not great.
The aggregate's not great, but it was THQ Nordic's, like, best launch on Steam ever, I think.
Oh boy.
or something like that.
I don't know if that says something about Biomutant or if it says
exactly.
something about the rest of THQ Nordic's
Right, that
PC
might
lineup.
be a perspective, a framing thing.
Yeah.
But still, like THQ Nordic does a lot and it's still around. So you know, if this is a big success for them and by their standards, like that still counts for them.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. Like maybe it did exactly what they thought it would do, but we'll see.
I would say this: it does feel and play more like Breath of the Wild than probably any other game. Even games that look more like Breath of the Wild visually, I feel like this plays more like Breath of the Wild.
Like the other comparison I would make would be like Immortals: Phoenix Rising.
Yeah, but that's so puzzle heavy.
Which is more classic Zelda. It's more Zelda than Zelda. Yeah. Oddly enough. And also like the combat and it's much more driven by Assassin's Creed. Like it's clearly Assassin's Creed combat being adapted to a more light version than like what Zelda does.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not Zelda combat either. Like it's very much more ambitious than Zelda's combat. It just doesn't
feel as good as Zelda's combat though.
Right, but like you said, you know, like Breath of the Wild is a bunch of systems interacting.
Yeah.
And this wants to be that, but it's really more a bunch of systems that are sort of like living next door to each other.
Or laying on top of each other, smothering each other.
They don't interact a whole lot. It's just they're sort of all at the bar together.
Yeah.
All getting drunk on different whiskey.
Yeah. And look, don't get me wrong. Don't think I'm saying like if you like Breath of the Wild, you should buy this. I'm just saying that people who like Breath of the Wild probably will enjoy it a little bit more than others.
Yeah, as long as you recognize what you're getting, and like you don't expect it to be as good as Breath of the Wild, but it's like if you want to see one of the first really in earnest, we're gonna take Breath of the Wild and like make our own spin on it, like that. I would agree that this is definitely that.
Yep. And there are mounts to help get around, as we mentioned earlier. Yeah. There are fast travel points,
and there's crafting, and there's all. I mean, there's so many things.
Crafting's insane. Like
to do.
You can get lost in the menus in this game. Mm-hmm. I did at first. I couldn't even understand what everything was supposed to do because it was all just kind of dumped on me. The other problem too is that
there is just a couple of huge info dumps at the beginning of this game,
and I was already sick of the narrator. I started skipping a lot of that stuff because I got sick of him very quickly. And I was like, this can't be that complicated. And then like an hour later, I regretted it.
No, I knew it was going. I started to get a little sleepy when I was like, because it was early in the morning, but also like I was getting a little sleepy during like the explanation of how everything worked at one point. So I instead of skipping, I got up and walked around and woke up again.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I already know, having seen these menus, I need to hear what they're telling me about this stuff because otherwise I'm gonna be lost again.
Yeah.
But it was just the pattern to me of like the gibberish. And then the calm British narrator, and then the gibberish, and the calm British. It just lulls me into like nap time. It's just
it's just weird. I mean, that's the best. If somebody asked me to review this game, and actually we used to do this on Game Trailers on Invisible Walls. We had 1-word reviews, and if I did a 1-word review for this game, it would just be weird because it is just weird. The art is weird. The combat feels weird. How the systems work together is weird. Like I think
my one-word review would be like, huh?
Yeah.
Like that's my main reaction to this so far. Is like, huh?
Yeah. Are you gonna keep playing it, Matt?
Yeah, I probably. I mean, look, I just started Mass Effect 2 last night, so like I've got something better to do.
I'm out. I'm off. I killed 2 of the bosses. I'm good.
But I will probably come back to it just to at least fight the one of the world beasts and the world eaters or whatever they are, and see how that goes. I don't hate it. I don't like that I paid $60 for it, but I don't hate it. It's not terrible. It's just to me, like I said, it's frustrating that like this could have been a star.
Yeah.
And instead, I think it's just sort of a moon.
And I hope this team gets to make another game. You know, I hope this game doesn't doom them. It sounds like it's selling okay, so
I think it sells okay. I just think next time pare back the ambition a little bit.
Yeah.
I like
a lot of times less is more.
Yeah.
You don't have to just jam everything into one game. It almost feels like it's like the first game they ever got to make, and they had all these ideas and things that they like.
Yeah, there's an element of like, we don't know if we're ever going to do this again, so put everything in. Put that crafting system that they've got.
I can see why I was delayed multiple times, too.
Focus on the combat. Focus on the world exploration. And like I think you would have had something a lot stronger.
And give it a different look. Get a new artist to work on it. Like the art in this game to me, and
Like,
I
I don't
get
mi-
art is subjective, but man,
I like the art in it, but like in the terms of like looking at the concept art in the trailers, I like the art. I just don't think it made the leap to the real time graphics well.
yeah, that could be.
I
don't like the
'cause
character designs for a lot of the characters.
I do like most of the character design, but I think in game, I think they're mostly ugly.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I just can't tell what I'm looking at.
Yeah, because especially as you get further in, Matt, like the enemies start having a lot more stuff stapled onto them. Because most of the items that they attach to them are just household items from human society.
Right.
Like one of the melee weapons I got early on was like a toilet bowl brush. Like that's like type of stuff you're talking about in this game. Like, and you don't know what those things are until you actually dig into them. You may look at something and be like, oh, I know what that's going to do to my character. Not necessarily. When you go and look at the actual stats, you'll be surprised to see what those things that you attach. Because you have like your head, your right shoulder, your left hand, your right hand, your pants, like all these different things that you can snap onto your character. And visually, they don't always kind of show you what they're actually going to do when you.
But you do have to have like outfits for different situations. Like, because like early on, I'm like, how come I got so many clothing preset slots? This doesn't feel like I'm going to need them. Oh no, you do.
It's
like,
for when you get into the areas, the hazardous areas. So you don't have to go and like respec your character. You can just choose one of the ones you've already set up for the toxic environment or whatever. So again, it has everything. It has too much, but none of it is exceptional. I guess that's a good way to
I feel like it's like everything's like there and it's all tied together with like a big rope around everything. Yeah. And it just feels like you need to pull it a little tighter.
Yeah.
Like if you could
so
pull
some
it
stuff
all
gets
together
squeezed
a little
out.
Bit more. Yeah. Some things might pop out. Maybe this the crafting
that
system flies away. That's fine. You're like whatever. But like it just feels like like you're just it's you're so close to something and it's just not not there.
Yep. So anyway, that is Biomutant. It is $60. Both of us recommend that you wait until the price drops to pick it up if you are interested after listening to us talk about it over the last half hour or so. I've had some fun with it, but the more I've played it, the less I've enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more at first than I have as I've played more of it. So
I can definitely see the I don't even want to call it the luster because it doesn't have a luster. But I can definitely see it getting old as you go through more of it. Because right now it still is kind of new. You know, I'm only like 3 hours in, and I've only I did my usual thing. I was like, go here. I'm like, no, I'm gonna just run this way and see what's over here and open up more of the map.
And you can do that. You can go wherever you want, and it's not like gated off by some huge fence or whatever.
But even if I've run into a couple enemies that are like double my level, and not a problem.
Well, the game will actually, in a lot of those cases, will tell you to run. It'll be like, you're not ready for this yet. Just keep on trucking, buddy.
Disagree.
Really?
I killed him.
Oh, you killed him?
I mean, they told me to do that, but I didn't. Like,
I'm just saying,
anyway.
like, you don't have to get caught fighting overpowered enemies if you don't want to.
No, and they have like their level numbers next to them when they pop out. You know exactly what you're going up against. But I was just like, I'm just going to try this anyway because so far the guys my level or one above have been really easy. And sure enough, I was like level 3 or 4, and they were like 6 or 7. And it was just like, nothing.
Yep. Yeah, it's unbalanced for sure. All right, let's move on. We're gonna
at least it's unbalanced in our favor, though.
That's true. Well, some people like when it's unbalanced the other direction.
Yeah. I mean, there is a hard difficulty mode. I'm playing on normal, but maybe the hard would be more balanced for someone who wants a real challenge.
That actually segues perfectly into our next topic, which is a new Final Fantasy game that has been revealed via leaks over the last week. So you already know that
E3 leaks have started in earnest.
They have already. Yep. You already know that Final Fantasy 16. Right now, we believe is at the very least a timed console exclusive on PlayStation 5. You obviously
got another timed console exclusive for PlayStation that like blew me out the back of the wall today.
Which
the
one?
Virtua Fighter 5 thing.
Oh yeah, Virtua Fighter 5.
I did not expect Virtua Fighter 5 to A, be back, B, have a new version, C, be free on PlayStation Plus.
Well, it's not new. Damn. It's a remake of 5.
But it's still like an update of 5.
Right. Yeah, they went in and redone the graphics
of 5.
in the Yakuza engine. They've redone the graphics. It looks great. In fact, I was going to mention that off the top of the show, and it totally slipped my mind, so I'm glad you brought that up. But the other big leak from this week, and that was even a leak, Sega put out the trailer for it, but the other big leak...
It leaked a little early. It leaked the day before.
Yeah.
I think the leak forced Sega's hand on that a little bit.
But put the trailer out. which is great because Virtua Fighter is like one of my favorite, probably my favorite
same.
3D fighting
Same.
franchise. So I'm excited. So you already know about Final Fantasy 16 being at least a time exclusive on PlayStation 5. You already know the story about the Final Fantasy 7 remake. A lot of people assumed that was going to come to Xbox. Still hasn't. Meanwhile, they're putting out like new DLC and updates to it that, for a big PS5 update. And now a new game has been unveiled by, I want to make sure I get his name right. It's a guy who used to work at Kinda Funny. His name is Imran Khan.
Mm-hmm.
He broke this story. Well, actually, I don't know if he broke it. There were rumblings the day before, and then he followed up and confirmed it on fanbyte.com. Again, I want to give credit to people who are breaking this stuff. He provided the first sort of real details from the game. And apparently, it is a spin-off Final Fantasy game set around the same time as the original Final Fantasy for NES. They're saying the title of it is called Final Fantasy Origin, but wasn't there already like a collection or something that was called that?
Yeah, Final Fantasy Origins was the PS1 collection of the early games, as I recall.
So it's weird that they would call it that, but that's what they're saying.
Yeah, that was 25 years ago. Who remembers that?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I got it on the shelf over there somewhere.
And it's being co-developed by Team Ninja and the Dissidia.
Team Ninja's very busy these days.
Yes, and the Dissidia Final Fantasy NT team. Which, yeah. I saw that part and I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
Maybe keep that one to yourself there, boys.
Yeah. But you can see on the lower third there, it says like it's 1999. Because, Matt, does it not appear that Square Enix has recoiled back to its old business model of the mid to late 90s where its focus, for Final Fantasy at least, was about 100% on PlayStation platforms?
Like PlayStation owned Final Fantasy for a very long time. I remember what was the first one? It was 13 was the first one that went multi-platform, right?
I
On 360. Because I remember there was a thing during E3. I walked through. I had to go through the area where Microsoft's theater was for the broadcast, and like through the door, I could hear the sound of the tests they were doing, and one of it was very obviously Final Fantasy 13. Mm-hmm. And I went back out and I said to like people, I'm like, I think they're going to show Final Fantasy 13 at this Xbox thing. I just heard Final Fantasy, and they're like, they were never going to do that. It's a PlayStation thing. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I just heard it, unless they're just running PlayStation trailers for their sound tests. I'm pretty sure I just heard Final Fantasy, and they're like, that's not going to happen. I'm like, and then of course, sure enough, there it was.
I think somebody actually broke that story based on the same thing. I think somebody else also saw or heard what you saw or heard, and then reported it, if I remember correctly.
That sounds right. I mean, I wasn't paying attention because I was on the location.
Yeah.
But I do remember like saying like, I think I did, and like no one believed me. Like everyone's like, nah, it's not gonna happen.
Well, now this new game is also reportedly a PlayStation 5 exclusive.
Yeah.
And they're saying it's coming to PC as well, which they also kind of said sense. About the remake. They also said that about Final Fantasy 16.
So do you think this is like Sony paying for it, or do you think they're just being like Xbox is not a platform where our audience is, kind of thing?
I think it's a mix of both. I think Sony's definitely money-hatting Square Enix in some way, but I also think that Square Enix just thinks it's a good idea for their brand. I think Square Enix believes most of its fans are still on PlayStation, and I wouldn't argue against that.
Yeah,
I
feel like that's a pretty solid assumption.
But I would also argue that they're foolish for doing this, that they would make more money on the game overall. Well, I don't know what Sony's paying them, so I can't say that definitively. But provided Sony is giving Square Enix around what I assume they are giving them for these projects, I still believe that releasing it multi-platform would be a better thing. And now here's the final caveat for this game so far called Final Fantasy Origin, is that it's Dark Souls-ish, Neo-ish.
Which would explain Team Ninja.
Right. And that's why Team Ninja is involved, is because they want to make this game Dark Souls-ish, a little more difficult, although the report from Mr. Khan says that it is going to be nerfed a little bit. It's not going to be quite as hard as Neo or Dark Souls.
I hope not.
That would be suicide. I mean, that would be the dumbest thing that they could do.
I mean, I think Neo is harder than Dark Souls.
I agree. I totally agree. Without a doubt. Like, I could actually make some headway in Dark Souls. I just give up on Neo after like an hour. I'm like, forget this. Like, I don't have the time to spend this long to get through one section of like a level against rank and file enemies. I just don't. How do you feel about that, Matt? Jumping in the Souls subgenre for Final Fantasy. Do you think it could be successful?
Maybe. I mean, if you Souls light anything, you can probably still get some traction. I mean, Star Wars did it, so why not Final Fantasy? Star Wars is way more mainstream, and that did fine. So this could also do fine. I guess it kind of depends, like, what you're spinning it off from. Like, is it new stuff that you're just calling Final Fantasy because the aesthetic's going to match? Is it going to be a spin-off of like 15 or
well, they said
or
it's set around
the
period of the first game for NES, which
so
would
it's
explain
like
the
it's like a
origin
Warriors of Light
subtitle.
thing. Okay, so it's like a Warriors of Light thing then. Okay. Because one of the other early things I saw was like it was maybe a Dynasty Warriors kind of thing.
No, like a Muso game.
Yeah, which I guess would also kind of fit.
Makes sense for Team. Yeah, I guess Team Ninja does still do those. They do make them for Nintendo.
Yeah. That would be because that setting would also kind of lend itself to co-op because there's usually there's 4 Warriors of Light. Yeah, canonically in that because the first Final Fantasy is canonically a legend in the worlds of all the other games. So like the Final Fantasy 1 never technically happened, quote unquote, but like everyone in a Final Fantasy game knows the legend of the Warriors of Light. Like that's where all the crystal crap comes from.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I could see that.
One thing that gives me pause on these rumors is, typically, at least personally, I look at games like the Souls franchise and Neo as games that don't tell overt stories. You generally have to dig around in documents to uncover the lore, and you have to do a lot of kind of investigating on your own to figure out what story the game is trying to tell. That does not jive with me with Square Enix at all.
No, but again, Fallen Order did it.
Yeah.
And Fallen Order has a lot of Metroid in it in addition to the Dark Souls, but like Fallen Order told a story. Like you can do that. There's no reason you have to be a slave to the format that Neo or Dark Souls follows in that regard. You can just do cutscenes. Square loves cutscenes.
Now that you bring that up, that is a good template for them to follow, Fallen Order, because it still had a lot of elements of the Souls subgenre, but I could still play it and enjoy it. In fact,
it uses the mechanics without like being punishing about it.
Yeah. And I think that could be a good template for them to use for this game.
I mean, I would certainly be looking very hard at that game if I were them in this situation. It translates pretty well. It's also a good example of taking the Souls elements and translating them into a about as mainstream as an IP gets. And pulling it off. Frankly, I mean, so we'll see. I don't think it's a bad idea.
I don't either.
Final Fantasy needs a little life. Certainly the Final Fantasy VII remake has pushed even that further into the kind of the more action oriented combat. So if you want to make a game that just like fully embraces the action idea, like sure, like that'll work. I guess I can't think of a good argument against it, especially if we're gonna have to wait years for 16 and years for 7 remake part 2.
I don't know. They're saying 16 may be coming a lot sooner than people think. That it was in development a long time before they ever showed it the first time.
Yeah, I mean that could mean a lot of things though. But I do think we'll probably be playing 16 before playing 7 too.
Yeah, I'd agree.
That wouldn't surprise me.
I wouldn't be surprised if we're playing 16 at the end of the year this year.
It could be. I would be a little surprised by that, but like, if it does, it's beginning to feel like it's definitely in the next 2 years by the end of next year at the latest.
Do you think it's weird that Square Enix is kind of going back to like the way the industry was 20 years ago?
Not really. I mean, I think that's just the way we're going right now. Like the two, Xbox and PlayStation are starting to pay for exclusives again. Apparently, for a long time that wasn't really a thing.
Publishers stopped allowing it, honestly, because they felt like they'd make more money if their games were multi-platform.
But I think now you're seeing the platform holders are finally starting to cough up enough money to counteract that conventional wisdom. And I think Sony's reacting to what Microsoft is doing by buying all these companies and offering these big Game Pass payouts.
Do you think it has anything to do with Game Pass?
I think it's a factor. I don't think it's the primary motivator. I think it's more of a big picture thing, but Game Pass is definitely part of that picture.
I mean, these publishers are seeing that packaged games are not selling on Xbox anymore. I agree with you. Like, I think that's too recent of a phenomenon to impact a project like this so early. But I wouldn't be surprised if stuff like that starts to impact it on down the road. I mean, if all you're going to make on a game is whatever Microsoft decides to give you for putting it on Game Pass, that's I don't know.
if they're offering like Epic Game Store level money, like you could be going back to Sony and be like, well, if we go with Microsoft, they're just going to pay us this much money.
Yeah.
And on your platform, we have to hope it sells that much.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do for us, kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it could give them a bargaining chip, but I don't see in any way how it's
That's
helpful.
probably not what's happening with Final Fantasy.
Yeah. I just struggle to see how it's going to be helpful at all to Xbox. Like, they're just going to, sure, publishers will use them as leverage to get a better deal out of Sony, but at the end of the day, they're still making the deal with Sony.
Right. I think we kind of been over that before, where clearly Microsoft has an end game in there. We just don't know what it is. Yeah. They want you in the ecosystem. So far, it feels like you're not doing the ecosystem many favors by being in it right now. But like, who knows what their economy of scale is going to be. The response from Sony seems to be to money hat some stuff they think is going to make their platform look better. And Final Fantasy has definitely been one of those things so far. And it seems to have paid off for them with 7. So why not continue with this spinoff?
It's crazy.
Like, there's worse things than to be, and Sony knows this firsthand. There are worse things than to be considered the platform you have to go to play Final Fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like the PlayStation 5 is turning into that for a lot of stuff. I mean, I get Microsoft just spent a ton on Bethesda. We know Bethesda's track record as far as getting stuff out into the marketplace. It's very slow. It delays stuff a lot. It tends to re-release games like 5 times before it puts out a new one. I don't know if that's the type of asset you need to compete with what's going on at PlayStation right now.
On the flip side, I would say that Final Fantasy is not the juggernaut it once was.
Yeah, definitely not. For sure.
So it's not like they're, whereas, when we get to the point years from now, when if you want to play the new Elder Scrolls, you need to have an Xbox account. Like, that's a big deal. Certainly maybe the biggest exclusive deal of the generation.
Yeah.
Because, people can talk about how they're over the Elder Scrolls thing or Bethesda makes janky crap or as much as they want, but Skyrim is a goddamn monolith. And there are people who have bought that thing 4 times over. Like, that is, other than GTA, you are talking about one of the most constantly rebought games around. And, 10 years old this year. Yeah. It's been a decade. And I think the thirst for a new one is going to be overwhelming. So, and I think they're going to, if not sell a lot of Xboxes, because obviously you can play it on PC, they're at least going to get a lot of people signing up for Xbox accounts.
Yeah.
To play that thing.
Apparently Microsoft's.
Apparently what they want more than anything else, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and if you're Bethesda, who cares? You're
right.
You're owned by Microsoft. It's no skin off your ass if they just put it up on Game Pass. So
they're done. They're doing what they're about to do.
Yep. Did you see the rumors this week that Tom Cruise stars in Starfield?
I did see that.
That's crazy.
That would be kind of amazing. Like, I don't know what to think about that, but I'm also kind of like in the wake of what happened with Keanu and Cyberpunk, like, it kind of fits. Yeah. Like, it kind of feels like an idea someone would have had in response to that, where it's like, if we can bring Tom Cruise up at E3, like, imagine that.
Maybe that's why Starfield isn't coming out until 2022, because they want to have their Tom Cruise moment at a real E3 before it's released.
Yeah. Well,
I'm completely joking, by the way, but.
Yeah. Well, apparently it is going to be at E3 this year, so maybe we get Tom Cruise this year.
Yeah, and some kind of pre-taped whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If he can get his head out of his own ass long enough to go do it.
I mean, that dude can promote like nobody else. Like, he
can. There's no denying it, for sure. Almost everything he touches turns to gold.
I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in terms of, like, the COVID or whatever, how we're doing this right now. But, like, if it was like next year, like, he absolutely would be there on stage in person.
Yeah.
Like, no problem. Like,
I would believe that.
And he would be more. He would, he'd just do his Oprah on the couch excitement thing, and we'd
go
be
on his way.
Show up in his Oblivion spacesuit, and you can even make that joke because he was what was that? He was in Oblivion. It was that sci-fi movie, right? So he could go and say, he's like, I was in a different Oblivion. These guys know Oblivion. There's another series though. I'm in a Starfield. Maybe I'll be in Elder Scrolls 6. You don't know.
Yeah.
Like they reuse guys.
Yeah.
If he has a good time, he might come back for Elder Scrolls 6. You don't know. Tom Cruise in Elder Scrolls 6. Let's do it.
Yep. A couple final notes before we move on.
They can afford him.
There's reportedly, a public alpha coming for Final Fantasy Origins. They said it's going to be, and it's this summer. They're saying it's going to be called Stranger in Paradise. I don't know why they would do that. Rename it just for the alpha. I don't know. But
sure,
again,
why not?
Public. And then
that would indicate it's probably coming out holiday this year.
Yeah. And another final note is that in all this reporting, it was also announced that there is an IDOS game that is multi-platform that will also be shown at E3 for the first time. My guess is another Tomb Raider game. Call me crazy.
IDOS? What does IDOS do now?
I mean, same stuff they've been doing. Whatever they tell them to do, basically. That seems to be how those studios work. They're like, now it's your turn to do a Tomb Raider game. Get at it. Like, I don't know.
And I would definitely not give them Tomb Raider again.
Yeah. But anyway, IDOS.
I know Crystal Dynamics is probably busy, but...
Yeah. But so a couple big things coming from Square Enix from E3. We don't have to wait much longer to find out. Obviously, we'll probably get a huge gameplay blowout of Final Fantasy 16 as well. At least I'm hoping that's the case. But the big story here is all that stuff is going exclusively to PlayStation, except for the IDOS game. Like all the Final Fantasy stuff has nestled back in its old home with PlayStation at this point, or PC. So either get a PS5 or build yourself a rig.
I guess IDOS Montreal, last thing they did was Mankind Divided. Everything else was an assist to Crystal Dynamics. So maybe it is time for them to have a new game.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, would you let IDOS launch a new IP at this point? I probably wouldn't.
IDOS Montreal? I don't know.
Yeah. I think I would prefer that they would work on a Tomb Raider, something that they at least know a little bit instead of working on a new IP. But we shall see. That is the magic and the wonder of E3.
Well, they've killed Deus Ex, so it's either that or a Thief.
Yeah. I don't know how much cash that has left in.
Wouldn't think so.
Yeah.
They just got off doing Avengers, so I don't know. It could be anything.
Yep. 2 or 3 weeks, we'll find out. But if you're an Xbox Series owner right now, you're probably feeling a little salty, I would say. Because you're like, okay, I got Bethesda, but when am I going to play that stuff? And, what's up with Hellblade 2? And is Halo Infinite going to be good? Avowed looks cool.
I'm not feeling too salty about theoretical Final Fantasy games on another platform. Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, you don't. You haven't liked the last couple of Final Fantasy games at all, so I can see
I haven't liked the Final Fantasy games since 12,
right.
So no. I like every sixth one. So I'm really looking forward to 18.
Okay. That'll be in 2030,
I love 6,
I'm guessing.
and I love 12, and I think 18 is going to be great.
Book it.
Book 18.
Yep. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Miitopia. Matt, did you play this at all by any chance?
No.
Did you even investigate it by any chance?
I mean, I know what it is.
Yeah, but I'm saying, did you investigate buying it for Switch? Because it was just redone and re-released for Switch.
No.
Okay. I just thought
I didn't realize it came out this week until I saw some news stories on it.
Okay. I thought you may have investigated it and then realized that it's $50 and said
that was also part of the problem.
And said, F that.
That was part of it. I mean, I did look at it in the store when I was buying whatever the last thing I got on Switch was. What was the last thing on Switch?
Pokemon Snap.
Yeah. When I looked at Pokemon Snap, I was like, what else is coming? I saw that. I'm like, oh, $50 for that. Let's not do that.
Yeah. I have a
question. I know it's not exactly the same as the thing on the 3DS, but that was free.
I have a question for you, actually. I cannot remember, and I tried to research it, and I could not find the answer. Was Miitopia free on 3DS? I have this thing in the back of my brain that it was for some reason.
I mean, it wasn't called Miitopia. It was just like it was just like the what you call it?
it was like an RPG was a part of that other like free thing that you could download,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You could. It was an add-on to like the Street Pass thing. It's like Miitopia for 3DS
Me
was like a
Pass or
thing,
whatever it was
an extra
called.
thing you could get, but you could still play like the basic RPG thing and like the stuff like that, like for free. Like you don't have to pay for that.
And this
And then
is
it was like you could
very
get
simple.
you get Miitopia, and you could get like a slot car race thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And like a bunch of stuff like that for like $5 or something. Well, I don't remember if Miitopia cost more at the time.
Vincent says you're talking about Find Me, and he's right.
Find Me, that's what it was. Yeah,
they're very similar. Is what I'm getting at. So Find Me, you could walk around with the Me Pass or whatever. Like we go to E3, and my collection of Miis would just explode. And then you could play this little simple RPG with all the Miis that you had stored on your 3DS. That's what Miitopia is. It is a very simple turn-based RPG that I would argue is 99% dependent on what Miis you have loaded onto your Switch. And one thing I realized very quickly is that even back when I got my Switch, I was like, ooh, I need to remember to like upload all my Miis from my 3DS or from my Wii U onto my Switch. And as soon as I booted this up, I realized that I had not done that. The only Mii I had in my Switch was me. And so when you first start this game, let me just get the B-roll rolling here so you guys can get a good look at what it looks like. When you first start the game, obviously you're the main character in the game. You're me. You could take that a couple different ways. You're me, not apostrophe R-E. Your Me is the star of the game, and essentially the plot is there is this Dark Lord who is stealing all the faces of the Miis, and it's so absurd. And it's your job to get their faces back. That's the whole objective of the game. When it first starts, you are prompted to upload any Miis that you have into the game from your Switch. And if you don't do that, you can go to your friends list and you can bring in any of their Miis if they've allowed their Miis to be uploaded. A lot of people don't on my friends list. Only like 3 out of all my friends that actually allowed their Mii to be downloaded. And then once you start the game, your party is built from a bunch of random Miis that the game just gives you. And the crazy part is you like set up your whole party with those Miis, and 5 minutes later, all those Miis are gone and you have to get more. But at that point, you can then start pulling in Miis from the popular tab on Nintendo Online. And
Miitopia on 3DS is $40.
Okay, so they did release it as a full product for 3DS then.
Yeah.
And this is $50. And so once you get those other Miis, or you start looking through those other Miis, that's where you can start finding like the celebrities and like the pop culture icons and all the Nintendo characters. Like there are just hundreds and hundreds of Miis to choose from to bring into the game. And that is really the charm of Miitopia. It tells a very simple story, as I said, and the moments in the game are very silly and stupid, but when you have like Will Smith and like Homer Simpson acting it out, it gives this, I don't even know how to describe the feeling that it gives you. It's satirical for sure, but it's like unpredictable because you don't know what the cutscene is going to be about until it happens, and you don't, in a lot of cases, you don't know what face is going to appear on what character until it starts happening. So it starts pulling in all these random Mii faces into the cinematics and the cutscenes and the brief story moments, and it really provides some genuine moments where I laughed like out loud, and that doesn't happen to me with video games very often. But ultimately, you do have to play the game as well, and that's where Miitopia, I think for most people who are well-versed in turn-based RPGs, will feel like the game comes up short. The game is very simple. It's basically just a side-scrolling game. You don't even have control over, once you're inside an area, you don't even have control over movement. Your character just walks along with the party, and then a random battle will pop up, and you have to take on the turn-based battle at that point. The party members in your team are also on autopilot. You cannot control what they do at all. All you can do is assign a personality to each one of them, and that will make them more likely or less likely to do certain things. Like my character is a chef, and the reason I did that is because that's how you create health. So I figured if I'm a chef, I'll probably be able to whip up dishes that I can give to my party members and heal them mid-battle. And as it turns out, that was exactly the case. And by the way, I do recommend that everyone plays as the chef because you get free health mid-battle, which can be huge in any turn-based RPG. So you have a loose idea of what they might do in certain situations, but you cannot directly control them like you can in pretty much every RPG at this point. They're on autopilot. There's like a Super Mario, like a 2D Mario like style map that you navigate, and like a new point will open up, and you just walk to that new point. And then once you're in that level, you don't have control over the movement at all. You walk along, you get a battle, you win the battle, you walk to a next one. Eventually, you will get to an inn. And the inn is where you have a little bit more control over the characters and the party, because once you get to an inn to rest, you decide which room the people are going to stay in. And if you put two characters in the same room together to spend the night, their affinity grows. And that will increase or affect how much they help you inside battle. It also helps you with like team up attacks and things like that. So that's another way you can kind of indirectly affect how your party participates in battle, but it with still not having direct control over it. Which, again, I think will drive a lot of people crazy who really love turn-based RPGs. The Mii creation tool in the game, still basically the same, but they've added a couple different features. There's like a makeup feature, and there's a wig feature. You saw that earlier in the B-roll. I had like a woman's wig on or whatever on my Mii. But for the most part, the game has pretty much stayed the same. They have upgraded the visuals, obviously. Now they're HD. And so they've redone all the character models and all the texturing and things like that. As you can see in the B-roll, still doesn't look great. It's very crude and basic, which, again, for a $50 game, I found that a little bit of a hard sell. But, again...
You kind of hampered by what the Miis are there, I think.
Yeah.
To some degree. You can only look as good as the Miis can look, and you make those too complicated, and you break the system. So
yeah, I mean, I get it. And then if you make the world look really detailed, then the Miis stand out like a sore thumb, because the Miis still have like they have appendages, but like their hands are just balls and their feet are just balls. So they do follow that kind of Mii aesthetic. Also, you can build your affinity with other characters by just fighting with them naturally. If you guys win a battle, like there's a little heart meter, and it'll show you every time you finish a battle that you're coming so much closer to creating that next level of affinity with your characters. One thing I do like about this game that I feel like other turn-based RPGs would do well to replicate is that you can attach cosmetic items to your character that change the stats of your character, but you can choose it to not change the look of your character. So you can attach a buff without having to wear like a goofy hat or without having to wear like some weird pair of pants or whatever. And I like that. I feel like a lot more games should do that. The other thing that you do while you're at the inn is you can cook food. And those give you permanent stat increases. And there's one other thing you can do there. You can cook food, you can sleep, but there's one, I can't remember what the other thing was. The big problem with the game, really, though, is that it just gets monotonous. The battles are so simple. You have essentially like one or two attack commands. In most cases, it's just one attack command. And because I'm the chef, my character whacks them with the frying pan, which was really funny for the first like 20 times I saw it. And then you have like one or two magic spells. And like you gain those as you play throughout the game. Some of them will give your characters health. Some of them will give them buffs. Some of them are actual attacks that will attack the enemies. But again, if it's someone in your party, you cannot control when they use an attack or when they decide to use magic or do anything else. It's just all kind of left in the hands of fate. And so the game gets monotonous very quickly. The battles get monotonous very quickly. There's not a lot of visual flash to the battles at all. It's the same frying pan attack every time. The only thing that's different is who you're whacking with the frying pan, which, again, if you've uploaded some fun Miis into the game, it can add a lot to it. But for the most part, the battles get stale really quickly. You can speed them up, which is nice, but it doesn't change the fact that you're just doing the same thing over and over, and there's not a whole lot of strategy involved. I think, really, your enjoyment of this game is going to be directly proportional to how much you like the concept of Miis in general. If you played other games where the Miis come in, like Wii Sports or whatever, And you got a nice charge out of that, seeing like Barack Obama do whatever, or any pop culture icon just doing stuff you wouldn't normally see them do. If that has resonated with you in the past, you're probably going to love this game, because it really takes that and kind of squeezes everything out of it that it can. It's just very random and very wacky, and it will catch you off guard a lot of times. And so there's a lot of value in that, but there's not $50 worth of value in that, in my opinion. And, with Nintendo, you very rarely get discounts on first-party stuff. I have a feeling this might be one where you do, though, to be perfectly honest with you. I'll be surprised if this sells really well at $50 is what I'm getting at. And so maybe there will sort of end up being a price cut on it.
Apparently it sold well enough at $40 that they're still charging that in the Nintendo store.
That's pretty crazy. That game is that old on 3DS. They're still charging $40.
Yeah, that was 2017, I think.
Yeah, I think it launched in December of 2016.
In Japan, yeah.
In Japan, and then in the U.S. it was very early in the year, in 2017. So it's been 4 years now, and they're still charging $40 for the 3DS version. So maybe I am really just whistling in the wind on that one. The game also works with Amiibo, so if you have a bunch of Amiibo lying around, it unlocks like Nintendo costume parts that you can use to customize your character. And I'll say this too. It's a good handheld game. Obviously, it started life on the 3DS, and so if you play your Switch mostly in handheld mode, this is a good game for it. There's not a bunch of small text, and it's very simple. So you don't really need to play it on a big screen to get the most out of it. You're not going to be hindered when you play it in handheld mode. So in that way, maybe some more people will pick it up, be like, oh, this is a game that I can play when I'm out and about, and it's simple, and I can turn it off. It's turn-based. So you can just put the Switch in sleep mode and come right back and pick it up mid-battle if you want to. So it does work well in that way. And, considering 50% of people seem to use Switch in handheld mode more than docked mode, it makes sense to maybe release more games like this. But, Matt, I think what strikes me the most about this is why, of all the games Nintendo could remake or remaster for Switch, why would it choose this one? It just, I don't know. There's so many.
Easy.
Because it's easy. Yeah.
And because there's not a whole lot to do with the Miis on the Switch.
Yeah,
right now.
It has been kind of abandoned on Switch. That's a good point. Like, I don't feel like they've been used the way that they were used on Nintendo's prior consoles. Like, obviously, they still work in Mario Kart 8 and some of the bigger games, but it isn't being pushed as hard.
Yeah, I mean, they're still there, but I tend to forget I have one.
Like I said, I only had one.
Yeah, and like you said, like I, almost everyone on my friends list does not share their Mii, so it's not part of the landscape like on the Wii where you started it up and all your friends' Miis were sitting there on the the plaza or whatever. Like it just wasn't. It's not as integrated into the experience of the system day to day as it was on the previous two, which like I'm not complaining about that. Like I'm fine if you want to make it let's say I don't miss the avatars on Xbox either. But I mean, Nintendo does seem to still consider the Miis to be a viable element of the brand. So I guess they're just sort of trying to remind us that they're there.
Yeah. And
also, it's an easy way to squeeze $50 out of more people, I guess. I don't know. Like,
I mean, it really just reminded me that they haven't utilized them as much as they have over the last couple generations, in all honesty. I was like, oh, yeah, these things. Like,
yeah, they're 15 years old this year.
I mean, the fact that I've owned my Switch for this long and I've never felt the want or the need to go download a bunch of Miis. Like, that was part of the fun of owning a Wii, was going onto the marketplace, the plaza, and finding the cool Miis, and then saving it to your Wii remote and bringing it into work or whatever, and letting people grab the Miis off your Wii remote. Like, it was a thing. Like, just the Find Me with the 3DS, Miis were huge on 3DS. It just feels like it's completely fallen off. I think that's a mistake. I really like the whole concept of it. I think this game proves that there's more they could do with them, but I think it also proves that that maybe for its next system, they need to finally update sort of the visual look of the Miis so that they can work.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up a great point. They just don't work for visually complex games. They would stand out. So you have to make every game that they're in look very simple. And I think that's
and
going
if
to
you're,
hold.
if you were 10 when the Miis started, you're 25 now.
Wow.
So
That's a mind blower right there.
yeah. How about this one? Today is 44 years ago today, Star Wars came out.
That's
which makes Star Wars or makes Phantom Menace was 22 years ago this month. So Phantom Menace is now as old as Star Wars was when Phantom Menace came out.
wow.
And let me hit you with this one. Star Wars, the original Star Wars, is now as old as King Kong was when Star Wars came out.
Wow.
44 years from 1933 to 1977.
Wow. That's pretty mind-blowing, man.
Time will eat us all.
Absolutely. It feels like it's eating me. I'll tell you that much. But anyway, that's Miitopia. Here's the thing. There's not that much else to say about it. It's like,
No.
It's a very
So
simple
is it completely identical? I don't know a whole lot about the 3DS one. Is it identical to that one?
Pretty much.
Or is it new? Is there new stuff in it?
No, I mean, for the most part, the game itself is identical. They have added the new stuff like the wigs and the makeup, so you can have a little more flexibility in how you create Miis. But otherwise, it's the same game. And, it obviously looks better and has, the models have been rebuilt. It has new textures and things like that. It looks way better than the 3DS version did. But otherwise, it's pretty much a straight port. And it is a very, very repetitive turn-based RPG with very few features and very little control over what happens in combat. So it's hard for me to recommend it to most people unless you were like me and you were pretty obsessed with Miis when they first came out. And there were a lot of people like that, let's be honest. Taking your 3DS around E3 was a thing back then.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody was in on it. Everybody had it set up so that you could grab their Mii and as they walk past.
Oh, everywhere. I took my 3DS everywhere I went when I traveled, specifically to get just going through airports in Europe and picking up every country in Europe somewhere. It's like, I got something from Belgium. It was a lot of fun.
Well, that was part of it. Was right? Wasn't it filling out getting one from every country? Wasn't that a thing? Or it was from every state? Yeah,
it would mark every state and every country you got someone from, and it was cool.
And then you unlocked those wallpapers or whatever.
Yeah, you unlocked the panels for the puzzles. It all worked really well. It was a good reason to take your 3DS places.
I took it everywhere. I would take it to the movie theater with me. Which meant I was probably going to play something. Which meant I was probably going to buy more games to play while I was out there getting Miis. And it was a brilliant user feedback system to sell more games to me. It was a good thing. I would take it everywhere. I'd take it to the movies with me. I'd take it to the mall with me. When I traveled home over the holidays, and it was crazy how.
And let's not forget the DS and the 3DS fit in your damn pocket.
Yeah.
Unlike the Switch, and fold it up so you were protecting the screen when it was in your pocket. It was useful for that. I'm not asking for Street Pass on the Switch. I would never use it because I'm not going to drag that thing around with me all the time.
You have to have big ass pocket. You have to have some Jenko jeans to fit the Switch in the pocket. The old school raver and skater jeans that were big in the late 80s.
Yeah, you're going to need some Junkos for this sucker.
But it was awesome. And then every once in a while you'd be completely shocked at where you picked up a new Mii.
Yeah. Or sometimes when it's I got some guy who's Mii, he doesn't even speak English.
Right.
And I'm oh, we've met each other twice before. And
How?
It's what?
Yeah.
How did we... And one guy, I remember I got one guy who was I think it was some French guy, and he had a weird, I remember him because he had a weird hat. And I got him on the way to Sweden. And then 2 days later, I got him again in the airport in Amsterdam. We were both taking short flights back through Amsterdam there and back again. And I got him a second time. I was like, or maybe he worked there. I don't know. I always liked that. That was a cool element of that.
Well, it's at E3. I think it was the second day of E3. Afterwards, there was always this big Nintendo thing that was only VIPs, people who had dealt with Nintendo for a long time, or people who were working on Nintendo fan sites were invited to. And it was always so they'd show Breath of the Wild in their press conference, but we'd go to this private exclusive thing where they'd play it in front of you. And Miyamoto would do a Q&A about it. And so I would take my 3DS into that thing, and it was just a bonanza. Literally, you just got every NOJ employee's Mii. I still have Iwata's Mii. on my 3DS.
I have Iwata and Reggie and
well, like people made those eventually that anyone could download. I got his legit Mii from him being in the room.
I got them from passes. I didn't download Mii. I forgot you could actually do that.
Yeah, you could.
But you just stand in a hallway at E3
and pick up so many people,
just everybody, and like it wouldn't stop. Like it would just. By the time you got the round of 10 people in through the Find Me thing, you'd have another 10 waiting at the gate.
Yeah.
It was a good time.
Yeah, I loved it. It was fun, man. It was like a little scavenger hunt that you were always on. Like they've lost that, and that's one thing with the Switch being as huge as it is. Like it could build up steam again.
And like sometimes at the party, like later that night, I'd be like, "I got your Mii standing in the hallway earlier today. You didn't even say hi. You walked right past me. I see how it is."
That's funny. But anyway, that's Miitopia. It is $50 on Switch. I would not recommend anyone spend $50 on this. It is like, especially with like Mass Effect Legendary Edition just coming out, like 3 amazing RPGs in one package for like $10 more. It's very hard for me to recommend Miitopia. But at the same time, if people are just Switch owners, you're going through a little bit of a dry spell here. Pokemon Snap didn't last all that long, and I'm sure everybody who bought it is completely through that game at this point. So if you're looking for something to maybe pick up after that, maybe. But I feel like I've set your expectations accurately at this point. You know what to expect from it. And it's definitely not deep turn-based combat.
What is the next big Switch game? Do we know?
Well, Mario Golf is coming pretty soon.
Mario Golf, that's right.
So that seems to be the next kind of big-ish one. We'll see if we get any surprises at E3 here in a couple weeks. We could get maybe a surprise launch of something, maybe. Not counting on it.
Probably not.
Yeah, I'm not counting on it. It's possible. But yeah, I think as of right now, Mario Golf is kind of the next big Switch exclusive.
That makes like they do like to do a Mario sports game in the summer. That's true.
Yep.
Where the hell is Golf Story 2? Whatever that is, Sports Story.
Those games seem to take longer to develop than you think.
I guess.
You would think after the first one, they would like hire some folks to build the game more quickly, because it's supposed to come out this year, right?
I had it on my fantasy team last year, I think.
Yeah, and then it's definitely coming this year, and we haven't heard anything about it.
Nothing. Haven't heard anything.
Yeah. It's strange how some of those indie teams just take forever.
It's often a bunker with Bayonetta 2, Bayonetta 3 somewhere.
Yeah. With Metroid Prime 4. They're hanging out with Samus somewhere. Metroid Prime
4 and a Shin Megami Tensei game we saw before the Switch was even released.
That game should be coming this year too, though.
I would think so.
They did finally show it again not that long ago. So
yeah,
there should be good stuff coming for Switch in the not too distant future. But yeah, it's been a little bit of a dry run here over the last handful of months. So if you're really desperate, maybe you buy Miitopia, but even then I would say no, don't do it. It's just what you're getting for what they're asking. That's another game. That game should be $20 max. Like $50.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous price for what that is.
Absurd. Like,
especially this far on.
Yeah.
It's
that old of a game. It was so easy to port and remake for Switch. And I roll my eyes when I say remake because it only needed remade because it's a 3DS game, and the rendering resolution of 3DS. What was that actually? It wasn't even like 480p. It was like something minuscule.
No, it was lower. It didn't need to be that, really.
Yeah, because the screen was so small or whatever.
And the touchscreen was lower resolution, as I remember.
Yeah. Yep. So anyway, that's Miitopia for Switch. We're actually going to kind of stay with Nintendo here for a second. This game is not a Nintendo exclusive, but it is, I guess what we could say at this point, the closest thing to a Pikmin ripoff that we've had yet. Not many, Matt, why do you think not many developers have tried to emulate Pikmin? Do you think it's because they think it's just not a great idea? Do you think they think it's too complicated?
I think it's because it just wasn't that much of a hit. Like it was very much what it was, and I feel like if you try to emulate what made Pikmin charming, you're pretty much in C&D territory. Like, I don't know how you translate that to something else.
Well, you're about to find out.
Well, no, I'm not, because I can't see it.
Well, you can't see it, but we had Vincent check out a game this week called The Wild at Heart, and it's a 2D take on Pikmin gameplay with an art style that's not all that dissimilar to Where the Wild Things Are. I was also curious. I haven't played it. Only Vincent played it. I was also curious how they would handle this in 2D. But based on my conversation with him, they handled it pretty well.
Yeah. Well, wasn't there a 2D Pikmin?
Was there 3DS one for Pikmin or handheld?
Something? Yeah, it was a handheld Pikmin, I thought. I never played it.
I don't know, actually. I don't remember that for some reason.
There's a Pikmin. It was like Pikmin something. There's a weird subtitle.
Now that you mention it, I am seeing like these fuzzy images in my head of a 2D Pikmin for some reason. And I think it was on 3DS, actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, it was definitely something. Hey, Pikmin.
Hey, Pikmin.
That's right.
Yep, that's what it was. Yeah. So here's a 2D knockoff of Pikmin with a different art style and a completely different story. Vincent checked it out for us. Let's get his report. All right, here we are with Vincent Borchardt to talk about The Wild at Heart. We don't cover a ton of indie games here on GameFace, but this is one that really caught my eye when it was announced, and I wished that I had time to play it. I did not, because there are so many other games to handle this week, but luckily Vincent jumped on the game. Vincent, I described this game when I curated the debut trailer as where the wild things are crossed with Pikmin. Did that end up being accurate? Is that what the game's like?
Yeah, I'd say that's how it's like. But if you want a more gameplay sense, it's Pikmin, but more of an action-adventure than a strategy game.
Okay, so you're not... Do you have to corral, like, groups of your soldiers and then instruct them and things like... It's not like a real-time strategy type thing like Pikmin?
You're still gathering the spritelings and having them do things, but you're not trying to, like, manage multiple groups doing things at the same time.
Ah, that's a big difference. What's the plot behind this game? The art style, I love it. It's really interesting.
So you play Wake. You're a 12-year-old kid who's running away from home because your father neglects you and your mother is MIA for whatever reason.
Okay.
And then when you're running away from home, you get lost in the woods and you end up in this magical place in the deep woods, and you meet up with these group of, like, how do I describe them? Like, just people trying to save the forest, because they've got a mystical, like, god who protects the forest from the evil things called the Never.
So do you get wrapped up in their battle against the Never? And are they like, if you help us, we'll return you home? Is it one of those deals?
I think it's more like they kind of recruit you because you have the magical ability to see the spritelings, the little Pikmin-like creatures.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So the spritelings, or the Pikmin, are there different types of them, and do they do different things? How does that all work?
Yeah, so far I've found 3 different types, and it looks like there's going to be 5. So the 3 I've found so far are, like, the default, like, the ones that look more like grass, and they can activate special plants, and they don't get poisoned from the poisonous mushrooms. Then there's a fire one that withstands heat really well and can also burn up brambles. Then there's an ice one that's fragile, but it doesn't get frozen, and it can also be cloned in special places. For interesting puzzles.
Okay. So to me, one of the big parts of Pikmin that I enjoyed was the multitasking, having a group over at one branch of the path doing one thing while you're fighting maybe somewhere else, and then ultimately you're kind of collecting this junk. What is the objective of this game? Is it just to destroy all the enemies, or is there some other objectives that you're kind of focused on?
So far it's a couple parts. First, at the beginning you're just trying to go to the, like, main camp of the Green Shields and like try to meet up with them, figure out why you're here. Then you have to, like, find all the other members who were lost and trying to recover their certain artifacts that they're trying to do. But of course none of them do, so it's up to you to do that. And that's the part where I am right now, trying to recover those.
Okay. What's the gameplay loop? Is it you get a cutscene and then you play through the mission, you get another cutscene? How does that all work?
It's more of an open world where you just try and do things. You just explore the woods and try to find new places and do things. You've got goals you're trying to get to, like the main Green Shield guy will mark, like, here's where these people are, go find them. That's most of the instruction you get.
Huh.
Yeah.
How does the gameplay work? Because that's really one of the charms of Pikmin is that they managed to make a real-time strategy game work on a console controller. Now, some would argue it's not perfect. Throwing the Pikmin can feel a little haphazard at times. How do they handle the controls in the gameplay?
Pretty much the same. You throw Pikmin, and then you call them back using, I guess it's your vacuum instead of a whistle, but still.
And then once you toss them, they just go to it. You don't have to instruct them in any way on what to do.
In general, like if you throw them in the area, they'll generally go do what you want them to do. Like if you throw them on something you want them to carry, they'll carry it. If you throw them near an enemy, they'll do it. Though it seems like the range is a lot pickier than in Pikmin. Like if you're throwing it right next to it and they bounce off of it, they'll often bounce so far away they don't actually go and start carrying it.
Oh, okay. So you have to be a little more accurate with your throws.
Yeah. But in general, the spritlings are a lot stupider. Like one puzzle I was doing like right before I started this is we have a simple puzzle. We have a bridge, an incomplete bridge, and then the two sections are inhabited by an area where if the spritlings go into it, they die. Simple enough. So one other thing is that you'll eventually, a little bit into the game, you do find your friend who's running away with you. So there are not two players, but two characters who both do slightly different things. You can split up and do things a little.
Okay.
But yeah, so I was trying to. So first I go, let's just throw the spritlings over to the other side. And then they should wait there, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, you throw them, they go confused for a second, and then they run back to you through the part where they're going to die.
I mean, that stuff does happen in Pikmin, though. There are many times where I would get really angry with a Pikmin. I'm like, no, 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 no. And they just fall to their death, and you see their little ghosts come up. But it's hard to have AI that's all that intelligent for that many characters, I think is the problem.
But I mean, like, I think part of it is that they just stood there to do the same. So the second thing I try is I split up the two characters, have one on one side of the bridge and one on the other. Then I throw them to the other one, and they still go confused and try to go back to the person who threw them and go die. And that's where I quit for the time.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Moments like that in games are always when I quit playing and take a break.
Yeah.
How is the story told? Are there full motion cinematics, or is it the typical indie thing with sort of headshots and text bubbles?
I mean, it's just all in-game stuff. They just stand around and the text boxes come up.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about as far as like corralling them? Because another thing that I remember about Pikmin is that a lot of times you'd think you had gathered all the Pikmin, but there would be like 3 of them like underneath a flower that you can't really see, and you kind of lose them and move on with the level, and they'd end up stranded back there. How does that all work?
That sometimes happens, but they show up on the map, which is nice.
That helps.
Another nice thing is that your vacuum has 2 different settings. There's the normal setting, which will just do all the idle spritlings, and then there's a high power one that'll get them no matter where they are. So you can, if you have them carrying something, you don't have to. You can just get the ones that didn't attach to it easily.
Okay. Now, once the spritlings are carrying something, are they in danger, or can you kind of clear out the level where they're going to walk to make sure that once they are carrying something, they're safe?
You can clear out the level and make sure nothing's in their path.
And what do they do with the objects? And where do they take the objects when they reach the destination? What happens with the objects once the objects get back there?
A lot of them, you take them to a warp pad, which takes them back to the main grove where like the green shields are headquartered. But others are putting them in certain places, like there's the bridge pieces, or there's a bunch of crates one of the main objectives in this current part has you moving crates in order to build a path across the water. So you take them there. Yeah. Interesting.
How do you create new creatures? Obviously, in Pikmin, you plant them in the ground and they grow. But how does that work in this game?
It's similar but more abstracted. You have 2 things. By destroying certain plants, you'll get these little blue sparks that is one of the currencies. Then you can also get seeds for the certain types of Pikmin, or you can just at the main grove you can buy the certain seeds you need with the sparks.
Okay.
Then you use the sparks to hatch the seeds, and you get more.
So I've noticed during this discussion you keep calling them Pikmin. Is the game that close to Pikmin? Does it feel like kind of a shameless ripoff? And is that a bad thing considering how long we've waited for a new Pikmin game?
I don't think it's quite a shameless since it's a different genre in a way, but a lot of the visual elements are very similar. Like the damage meter you'll see on the enemies and the objects looks almost exactly like the one you'd see, the round circle with the keeps getting smaller, the one with the pie.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it looks almost exactly like it.
But you feel like because you're not managing multiple fronts, it doesn't completely feel like a carbon copy?
The other major thing that's different is that there are a lot more of the traditional action adventure tropes.
Oh, like what?
But beyond this currency of the sparks, you also collect various nuts and bolts, and you can use them to upgrade your character. You can buy healing items.
What does that do? If you upgrade your character, how does that help? Does it help you throw the creatures farther? What does that do?
Not really. You get extra health. You can get extra storage in your bag. You can use the high power mode on your vacuum longer.
Okay. What about the difficulty of the game? Have you found it to be challenging at all, or are you kind of breezing through it having played Pikmin before?
It's pretty breezy.
Yeah.
Notably, the combat is generally a lot easier. Like, I think I've only lost some Spritelings like a couple times.
And a lot of those were probably the accidents that you had talked about before where they just run to their doom.
Not really. Like one was like, I think they might force you to lose a couple just because they want to tell you that no, they don't really die. They just go back to the forest. You don't feel bad.
Oh.
And then one is just with the fragile ice ones.
That's one of the great moments about Pikmin, though, is when, and I hate to say it, when one of the creatures start eating the Pikmin and the ghosts start coming up out of their mouths. There's this weird dichotomy with Pikmin. It's this very cute game, and it feels like it's made for kids, but there's also kind of this dark side to it. Does this game have that as well?
A little. Yeah. Part of it's in the story where there are like these dream sequences where Wake's remembering his neglectful father.
Uh-huh.
So that's part of it. And then the Never are like these shadow creatures that appear when night falls, because of course there's day and night, because everything needs to be just like Pikmin.
How much is this game, Vincent? And what platforms is it available for?
So it's $25. It's on PC and Xbox One, but it's also part of Game Pass Day 1.
Oh, great.
And that's how I'm playing it.
And it's available right now on Game Pass for both PC and Xbox?
Yeah.
Wow. So look, for somebody who doesn't have Game Pass, would you recommend this game at $25?
Definitely. This is such a great thing, especially since it's taken a decade for us to get an actual new Pikmin, and the new remix levels in Pikmin 3 Deluxe do not count.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's different enough that it doesn't feel like you're playing another Pikmin game, but similar enough that it's kind of like that comfort food feel.
Yeah. It's more similar than I thought it would be considering the genre shift, but it's still good.
Any rumors or rumblings about it coming to other platforms?
Not that I've heard.
I'm guessing
maybe it will once Xbox's exclusivity runs out, but we'll see how long that takes.
I'm surprised that they didn't try to sign a deal with Nintendo exclusivity, because it's right in that wheelhouse, but it also gives me hope that maybe Nintendo's next Pikmin game isn't that far away. Maybe Nintendo was like, no, we've got one coming, and we know we'll get your game eventually. So maybe that was a part of Nintendo's thinking on why it's an Xbox and Microsoft exclusive, really.
Or maybe it's just that Game Pass offers enough that like indie games are instantly profitable because they have all the money.
That's true, but the rumors are, and I mean there's some evidence that backs it up, that indie games do very well on Switch as well. So I think it's probably a given that this will come to Switch at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Although playing it in handheld mode might be a challenge. I know Pikmin in handheld mode can be tough. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle it, or if they do anything, or if they're just like, play it on the stupid TV. So would you recommend this for $25? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely. It's great so far.
Any final comments about it before we go?
Not really, just expect your spritlings to be a little dumb, and
Okay.
definitely play it, especially if you have Game Pass. It's getting overlooked by the major outlets.
It is. Like, no one's covering it. And as soon as I saw this game, I was like, oh, that's something I want to check out. So I'm kind of surprised that I don't think I've seen a single review for it yet, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a couple from smaller outlets that we don't curate, but other than that,
Yeah,
nothing from the big ones.
Yeah, the big boys aren't touching it. So there you go. That's The Wild at Heart, available for PC and Xbox, and right now free on Xbox Game Pass. Thanks for talking to us, Vincent. All right, so there you go. The Wild at Heart, Matt. It is available for free for Game Pass subscribers right now. And I will say this. I had remembered the game. It was announced quite a while ago. And then after I spoke with Vincent about it, and he sent me some footage to use to put together this segment, I went and immediately downloaded it. I am surprised that there hasn't been a Pikmin clone until now, to be perfectly honest with you. You're right. Pikmin didn't sell well by Nintendo standards, but by the standards of an indie studio or whatever, kind of, as the lower third says, filling the void left by a lack of Pikmin games, it makes a lot of sense to me. So I downloaded it. I have not had a chance to play it yet because I've been trying to get through as much Biomutant as I could before we did the show today. But I am excited to play it and check it out. And I don't know how much time I'm going to have to spend because the last game that we're talking about on today's show unexpectedly has me addicted. So we'll see how much time I can set aside for The Wild at Heart. But again, if you have Game Pass, it is free right now on both PC and Xbox. And right now, that's the only platforms you can get it on, too. You can't get them on anything else, although I'm guessing it won't be long until there's a Switch version announced, provided that Microsoft hasn't given a big money hat to the studio to keep it on Game Pass for a really long time. That's typically not the case with indie games, though. It just makes too much sense on Switch. And so I suspect Switch will probably be the next version that's announced, and then eventually it'll go everywhere else. And I hope it does well.
Either a Switch version or a Nintendo C and D. We'll see.
Yeah. I wish you could have seen it, Matt. Do you remember the game at all? Seeing the trailers on?
No, I mean I looked up like shots of it while the video was playing. I definitely see where the wild things are comparison. There's a couple things in there where I'm just like, oh, those really look like Pikmin.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks nice. If it's on Game Pass, I guess I might as well try it.
It even has the same meters as Pikmin. That has like the clock that slowly like dwindles.
Yeah, I mean you can't like trademark gameplay ideas, so like it is free game, it is fair game.
And it does seem like they did a pretty good job getting the concept to work in 2D as well. So definitely one to check out. Again, it's kind of slow right now. Not lots of big games coming out. If you already made your way through Returnal and Pokemon Snap, and maybe you didn't pick up Mass Effect, certainly. And again, for Game Pass, it's free. If you don't like it, you can play it for 5 minutes and move on to something else. But I think it looks pretty cool. Big thanks to Vincent for checking out the game and jumping on with me to talk about it, and for being a part of GameFace once again. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about two people or entities that returned this week that I think most fans, even though they may not know who they or it are, should be really excited about. The first is Amy Hennig. Amy Hennig worked at Naughty Dog for a long time. The last game that she shipped from Naughty Dog was Uncharted 3. She worked a good bit on Uncharted 4, and then they separated, I think it was 2014. Is that right, Matt?
That sounds about right.
Roughly around there. She left Naughty Dog, and it sounded like they had creative differences. Would you agree with that, Matt?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. And then they ended up like
certainly there's some people who are working with her who then did not make the transition to the new version of Uncharted 4.
Yeah, they ended up like she left and they ended up reworking Uncharted 4 like big time.
Yeah, they reworked a lot. They recast somebody. They brought in Sam Drake. And then the rest is history, I suppose. And now they're making an Uncharted movie with Mark Wahlberg as Sully. So just fuck everything. Why not? Like, here we are. Like,
well, we knew Amy was planning on launching a new studio and building a new game, and all that stuff was kind of just rumor and conjecture. And I do know Amy pretty well. And I've actually reached out to her recently and haven't heard back, which made me believe that she was very, very busy. And as it turns out, she was, in fact, very, very busy. The first details on her new project were announced this week. Her new company is called Skydance New Media. That's the name of her new studio. She just hired the co-writer who was working with her at EA on the Star Wars game that was codenamed Project Ragtag, which, as we have found out since it was canceled and she left EA, that it was actually really far along. And it's very rare for a game to be canceled that far into development, but it was. And so she's brought on the co-writer from that project to work on the new game with her. The only thing that they would say, and they are hiring other people as well, but the only official sort of statements they made about the game that they're working on is it's a story-driven action-adventure. Surprise, surprise, just like Uncharted. And it's also a high-quality, and this is a quote, a high-quality AAA single-player story-driven action-adventure game built using the Unreal Engine, unquote. Matt, how excited are you for this game? Do you believe that she's going to have the resources, the talent, the timing to create something on par with the stuff that she did at Naughty Dog?
I mean, maybe. Like, look, I'll take something on par with what she did at Crystal Dynamics, because she did the Soul Reaver and the Legacy of Kain games, which were not what I would term AAA Uncharted level titles.
I think at the time they were up there, though. I mean,
nah.
No, you don't think?
No.
I mean, compared to other action adventure games at the time.
No. Like, if you really look at those games, honestly, like Soul Reaver, the first Soul Reaver was cut in half, and they kind of bunted for the end of that. The second Soul Reaver was literally running down a single path for several hours until you got to the end of the path, and you turned around and went back to the beginning in the reverse.
Well, it sounded like Uncharted until the part where they had to go back to the beginning.
Right. Blood Omen 2 is widely considered terrible. And Defiance got there. Defiance did what they needed to do. But, like, in terms of writing, they were second to none. But in terms of, like, the game, like, they were clearly doing what they could with what they had to work with.
Do you think that's going to happen again with this new project?
I mean, it might, but like, we'll see. Like, you know, I don't know what kind of budget she's working with. I don't, but like, she's an extremely skilled designer and one of the best writers who's ever worked in the medium. So I am willing to play anything she puts out. Like Jade Raymond, the tragedy of recent years has been we have had no Amy Hennig game.
Yeah.
You know, I am going to be eternally furious at whoever decided I shouldn't get to play an Amy Hennig written and produced Star Wars game. Like, fuck you. Like, whoever made that decision, like, I hope you have ticks. Like, I'm still mad about that.
I feel like we've seen this movie before, though, Matt. You know, we have Patrice Désilets, who left Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed to create his own game. Some cool concepts, execution not great. We saw Cliff Bleszinski leave Epic to work on his own stuff. Up and down quality, more down than up, I think would be fair to say, though, with the projects that he worked on after he left Epic. It doesn't feel like a lot of the developers who leave big studios and big projects to go do their own thing end up with products that are as good as the products that they left, just in general. You think that's a fair assumption?
No, I think it's a case-by-case thing, and you can't judge one thing by the other. There's no trend there.
Can you think of anybody who left a situation like that and produced a game that was as good?
I think most people who leave those situations leave the industry.
Yeah.
Like, they go do something else.
Yeah.
And maybe she did do something as good with Star Wars, but we'll never know.
Right.
Cliff, like, I love the guy, but like he wandered into a very competitive area without much of a plan.
Yeah.
who was the other one you mentioned?
I don't even remember now.
Yeah. I guess Kojima.
His game wasn't as good.
No, I mean, I thought it was about as good, but I don't like Metal Gear very much.
You had the guys that left the Halo team to make that crazy multiplayer shooter with drones, and that was terrible.
Right. I mean, Destiny turned out okay.
Yeah, but those were the same guys. For the most part, like 80% of the team was the same.
Also, like Amy's primary skill for me is the writing. I would not describe any of the people you listed as strong writers.
No, definitely not.
In terms of that. So we'll see what she can put together in that regard. And like, look, she's done a wide variety. You know what her first design credit is? Not her first game she ever worked on. You know what her first design credit is for?
I don't.
Michael Jordan, Chaos in the Windy City on the Super Nintendo.
There's a lot of iconic developers who got their start working on stuff like that.
Going from that to Uncharted is quite a journey.
Yeah.
I think she's very good, and I would just like to see her get to do more output. I don't know what Skydance is going to afford her to be able to do. I don't know who's funding that or whatever. But at this point, I'll take what I can get. Well, I'll take a fucking visual novel from her right now. Okay.
I mean, honestly, I really thought that like her first game was going to be like an adventure game where she could just really focus on her strong writing and things like that. So I was surprised to hear that they're going the action route. But
yeah, I mean, the announcement for the company like they announced the Skydance thing
a while back,
like a couple years ago, like 2019.
Yep.
And they said it was like interactive series for streaming platforms or something like that.
Yeah,
like it could be something we're not expecting. It could be. I could be closer to left the industry than I think I am on this one. Like I don't think she's going to be trying to recreate Uncharted here.
Well, that was kind of my next question. So the last game we talked about, The Wild at Heart, it was filling a void left by Nintendo refusing to release Pikmin games. And now with Naughty Dog has kind of decided to move away from the Uncharted franchise. Do you think it provides a void that her new game could fill? And do you think that she's going to have a team capable of producing a game like that?
No, because she's not stupid. Like you can't just step in and make a $300 million AAA game to compete with the Uncharted space. Like that's not a thing anyone is going to realistically try to do. So, like you can't compete with Naughty Dog without the backing of a massive corporate backer like Sony or something. Like you can't do that.
But aren't most people going to compare her new game to Uncharted anyway, even if it's not fair?
Nobody worth listening to.
Touche. It'll be interesting.
Also, it's been a long time. Like Uncharted 3 was many, many years ago. Like, who knows who'll even remember who she is outside of people like us.
I mean, I don't think most people know who she is in the first place, man.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Let's be honest.
She's definitely inside baseball in terms of like, knowing the industry, I would say. Like anybody, it's like I've talked to people who are diehard Sims players who don't know who Will Wright is. Knowing the names of the people who make games is still kind of a niche thing. Yep.
It's good that they're using Unreal Engine. They're not trying to build their own. So that's a good first step.
Yeah. Well, I think she probably learned. I know she, they spent a lot of time whipping the Frostbite engine into a shape that it could do what they needed it to do for that Star Wars game before they got canceled.
Yeah.
The one thing she did specifically talk about was the fact that there was no way in the Frostbite engine when she got there to have a character climb over something.
Yeah.
Like to climb over in third person, to climb over like cover, like Nathan Drake does 15 times a minute.
Yeah.
And so they had to basically build that into the Frostbite engine. And then she says it was something like, that's still there, that's added to the engine. Like that's there as part of the Frostbite library now. So other teams can use that in their games, but they're never going to get to use it for their game. So they did all this work that's going to benefit these other teams at EA, but they're never going to get to use it for their game that they built it for. And she was a little about that. And I don't blame her for that.
I don't either.
That is annoying that you improve this stupid engine they forced you to work on and then they fired you and kept all your improvements. Like that's...
But it has been almost 7 years since she produced anything. It does kind of make you wonder what to expect from it, I
don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Star Wars game was pretty great.
Yeah.
I know they canceled it, but considering what they were canceling and what they were letting through at the time, I'm not sure I'm willing to say EA made the right call there.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm guessing we don't see her game for a long time.
Maybe. I mean, the announcement about her joining Skydance was like the end of 2019, so there could be something to show sometime this year, maybe a little teaser or something.
Yeah, I mean, she must have taken up the bulk of the writing duties if they've only been working with her as the lead writer all this time.
I mean, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Yeah. She was one of the best in the industry. So.
If she's bringing on someone, the other writer to sort of fill in the gaps and take up the heavy lifting on that side while she focuses on the rest of the game, now that they're hitting like a bigger part of production, like that would make sense to me.
Crazy part, too, is that Uncharted 3, as far as story goes, was the best of the three. I thought the games got better as story was involved as the series went on. So she left there when she was kind of hitting her stride. You don't agree with that?
No, I think Uncharted 2 is still the best. Although I think
it's the best game of the three. I think
the parts
with
the
best story.
I think Uncharted 3 story is a little disjointed in places. I do think it has the best Drake and Elena stuff.
Yeah.
But that's a fairly small part of the game. And I still think, I have no evidence of this, but I still feel like the ship, the ship sequence where it flips out, a big thing in the middle with a ship, that has almost nothing to do with anything in the rest of the game.
It's just a tech.
And I
I
am very convinced that originally that was because the same thing with the train from 2. They started the train sequence like first. That was the first thing they started and the last thing they finished because it was the hardest thing to do in the game.
Here?
So I think originally in the original plan that ship sequence fit a lot better, but it was the big centerpiece thing they started earliest and had to get done. And so at a certain point, I think the game changed. The narrative of the game changed around it, but you had to keep the ship sequence because it was too much invested, too much time.
It's also amazing. I mean, I'm not complaining that it was in the game.
It just comes out of nowhere a little bit.
It does.
It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I mean, I'm glad it's there, but it's like,
I mean, even just that section of the game stands out from the rest of the game as far as how the gameplay worked and everything. It was an awesome tech demo, really.
Yeah, I think 2 holds together overall the best.
I think it's the best game in the series for sure.
Obviously, I like 3 story better than 4. But
that's not saying much based upon the things you've said about Uncharted 4 in the past.
I really don't like what they did with that game.
Yeah.
Story wise, God, I hate Sam Drake. really don't like Sam Drake.
Okay, well the other sort of,
but neither does Lost Legacy, so it's okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Lost Legacy was a catharsis for me because Lost Legacy seems to dislike Sam Drake as much as I do. So
the other studio, this is a whole studio that's coming back, is Free Radical Design. A lot of people watching this show may have no clue who Free Radical Design is, but they were basically built from a bunch of developers who defected from Rare after Rare was purchased by Microsoft. The 2 leaders of the studio, one was David Doak. You may recognize that name from GoldenEye. Was he a character in GoldenEye? I think he was.
Yeah, his face is on one of the enemies, I think. He's in there. Yeah.
And then another guy named Steve Ellis. They were the heads of the studio. And their big project, their big franchise they created was TimeSplitters. TimeSplitters was a very GoldenEye-like shooter. In fact, getting B-roll for this, it almost looks like they stole the GoldenEye code. Like when they walked out the door, it looks so much like GoldenEye. But the twist is it's set in all these random time periods, like 1930 Chicago. It jumps all over the place, which allows for the game to be, I don't know, unpredictable, different. There aren't a lot of shooters where you can play in a bunch of time periods. There is BioShock Infinite that had kind of those timeline stuff.
There's time lapse.
Yep, time lapse.
Not time lapse. Time code. Time. Time shift. That's what it was. Time shift.
Yeah.
And there's another one that was terrible. I can't remember what it was. It was it was like a terrible first-person shooter, and you had to jump to different time periods, like fix things in time. It was a Civil War section. It was a bad 360 game. It was like an infamously bad 360 game.
Homefront? No.
Homefront there's no time travel in Homefront. This was like the whole thing was you were part of a group that went and fixed time travel problems. The only thing I specifically remember, because I remember Abby played it for review on XPlay, And I specifically remember she found in the Civil War section, she found a rock. And if you walked next to the rock, you died. Like it was just this rock off to one side. And if you walked too close to that rock, the character just fell over dead.
Huh.
Like it was not a finished game.
Did you like TimeSplitters?
I think I did. I think I only played TimeSplitters 2.
Okay.
But I remember, like you said, it was very GoldenEye-ish. And it felt like it. It definitely felt like an evolution of GoldenEye. You could tell it was made by a lot of the same people. I liked it. I had a lot of trouble playing first-person shooters on the PlayStation 2.
Oh.
I just didn't like the controller, and I thought it was so polygony and ugly that I couldn't.
And it
really
is. We're seeing B-roll of it right now. It is very polygony and ugly.
Yeah, but it is. There is a version in Homefront Revolution. You see that?
No,
That was like last month, I think. Some guy, one of the developers of Homefront Revolution on Twitter, he said like, yeah, there's a complete remaster of the first TimeSplitters in Homefront Revolution. And the code, he's like, I gave the code to a friend of his. He gave the code to a friend of his to tell the Homefront Discord, and the Discord banned him because they thought he was trolling them, and he couldn't. And he lost the code, so he's like, it's in there somewhere, but I don't remember the code to get to it. And so after a couple of days of research, somebody found the Discord record or something, and they found the code, and you can put it in, and you can play TimeSplitters in Homefront Revolution.
Wow, that's crazy.
I bought Homefront Revolution for $5 on the Xbox store to do that. It works.
It worked. It worked on you. You got you to spend $5.
Yeah, I got paid $5 for a game I already don't like.
I wanted to like TimeSplitters more than I actually did.
Yeah, I think that's a fair thing.
So I was like, oh, it's the GoldenEye guys. I'm like, I freaking love GoldenEye. How could this not be the most awesome shooter ever? And it wasn't terrible. It just wasn't great. It's kind of like the eternal darkness of first-person shooters. Coming from Nintendo at that time, Eternal Darkness was originally an N64 game that moved over to GameCube. So I'm sure there were lots of internal conversations about products that were coming from Nintendo while he was at Rare. So I don't know if he got a little inspiration from Eternal Darkness or TimeSplitters or not, but I was not a huge fan of it. The gunplay was great. I liked the multiplayer a lot too. The single player, though, I hate the art style that they used. And surprisingly, the whole time travel thing just wasn't, I don't know. It never worked for me. I think the time periods that they explored just weren't particularly interesting, unlike Eternal Darkness.
Darkest of Days is the bad one I was thinking of.
There you go. Well, the news is that Free Radical Design has been reformed with both David Doak and his partner Steve Ellis, and they are making a next-gen version of TimeSplitters. And I will say this, I feel like it may have better possibilities now than it did when it originally released. And I have my interest in something like this is probably higher than it was when it released as well. I'm surprised that more games, not just shooters, but more games haven't done the whole, now we're in this one time period, now we're in another. It seems like a very obvious concept to make interesting, but it's rarely done.
I think
games.
It's very hard to do. Just because you're talking about two different time periods, you're talking about two completely different forms of art direction.
Yep.
And a whole different set of textures and a whole different set of everything.
And I would argue Eternal Darkness, there were time periods that were more successful than others, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and also let's not forget that Eternal Darkness reused a lot of, they reused almost every environment at least twice. Mm-hmm. And it just, okay, now the temple has just got more vines in it because it's like 100 years later or whatever. Mm-hmm. It works for that game. Like it's a valid way to go about it, but it's like they were
cheating a little
bit. Also, that's not time travel. It's just sort of like jumping from time period to time period. Let's not
wait. What's the
terms
difference?
Of narrative? This is flashbacks, but let's also not forget time travel never saves the story.
It usually ruins it.
Yeah, time travel is a device to let the story happen. As soon as the time travel becomes the story, you are generally in bad territory.
It's also a very cheap plot device to fix problems or make problems, in all honesty. Because it can be hard to keep track of all the disparate threads that
well,
get
the problem
dangled.
with time travel is that it's impossible. So you are automatically breaking the logic of the story by incorporating it, and you just sort of have to pick where you decide to sort of bleep over the problem.
Yeah.
And there are stories that figure that out. Back to the Future figures that out. Back to the Future 2 does not figure that out. So it's like, because in Back to the Future 2, the time travel is the story.
Right.
And in Back to the Future 1, the story is about Marty and his parents. The time travel just gets you there.
Right.
That's the good use of time travel. And that's one of the reasons TimeSplitters worked was the point wasn't really that you were time traveling, because the point was that it was fun to play. It would have been more fun if I could tell what I was looking at, PlayStation 2. But the point was that it just zapped you here, and you're sort of, you're chasing guys, the enemies kind of through the time periods. And part of the fun part is sort of the dissonance of you're running through this other time period, but you're these future agent guys, fighting your way through this stuff, and other characters are what the hell? There's a fun element to that, which would probably be more fun now when the art direction could really be realized more accurately.
It's also crazy seeing footage of first-person shooters where you can't aim down sights. That was
not a thing, really.
It just shows you how old the game is. Matt, so Deep Silver is the publisher that is bringing Free Radical Design out of retirement. Is this a smart move? I don't think anybody watching the show on stream right now has probably even heard of Free Radical Design, and my guess is maybe half of them have heard of TimeSplitters.
I mean, TimeSplitters has a very dedicated fan base.
Yeah, it does. There are people that are rabid fans of this franchise.
Yeah. So at the very least, you're guaranteed to be talked about.
Yeah.
So I guess at this point, it's probably worth a shot. That's about as far as I'd go.
Is that where Deep
we'll see what
Silver's
happens.
at? I guess it is, if it's still waiting for it. That for poor publisher. Every game it announces, it takes 6 years for the game to come out.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's probably a better investment than Dead Island 2
at this point. It's sure looking that way. You think we're ever going to see that game?
I imagine we'll see it in some form. I can't guess that it's going to be really all that great.
It's been remade, 3 times now? It's on its third
especially
iteration.
I mean, my eye is still on Dying Light 2. It sounds like we're going to get some kind of next-gen revamp of Dying Light 1 this year. So we'll see. But to me, the people that made Dead Island 1, that's Techland. They went over and made Dying Light.
Yeah,
Dying Light is Dead Island 2.
Yeah.
So whatever they're making over for Dead Island, I don't know. Dead Island 1 wasn't that much of a revelation to me that I'd really be clamoring all these years later for a sequel.
I'm surprised Deep Silver stuck with it so long, to be perfectly honest with
it's
you.
It must be a sunk cost thing at this point, I would think.
I guess. But yeah, so this kind of mediocre, middling shooter from the PS2 era is getting a new...
Don't let them hear you say that.
Yeah, I know. And don't let the fans hear it either, because like you said, they are big-time fans of this franchise.
I mean the fans.
Yeah.
I mean, TimeSplitters 2 is the more of the darling. I know, there's people that TimeSplitters 1 is sort of acknowledged kind of an early installment weirdness sort of PS2 shooter, cool, but there's people that will defend TimeSplitters 2 to the death, mostly on the GameCube, I think.
Yeah.
But TimeSplitters 2 is sort of the star, from what I could tell.
I do think the concept has possibilities, and I think the possibilities are more fruitful in 2021 than they were back then. I think with the advances in technology and middleware and things like that. I mean,
certainly if you want to kind of really leverage what Insomniac's doing with Ratchet and Clank, in terms of the jumping from portal to portal thing, you could do some really cool stuff with that with time travel.
You could. But they are just forming a brand new team. So I don't know if they're going to have the technical prowess to make that happen. Who knows? It's possible.
I mean, once Insomniac's got it done,
you just look at the source code. Yeah.
You look at that, or you call Ted Price.
Yeah.
It's how'd you do that?
He might tell them. I don't know. It's another first-party studio, sure. Free Radical Design, I don't know.
I mean, I think
Ted's a great guy and all.
Those guys are also all of a generation, and also that might be something that makes it better on PlayStation than on Xbox.
That's true.
It's a thing that might work better that way. It might be something that you put them in touch with Sony.
Yeah.
And be we're interested in doing something that really takes advantage of your hardware. We'd like to talk to Mark Cerny about it. We want to be involved. That's a thing that could happen.
Well, as of right now, it is announced for PS5, Series, and PC. It doesn't look like they're going to try to straddle the line and release a PS4 or Xbox One version, although by the time this game comes out, those consoles will be
that
long
hopefully we'll be past that by then.
I hope. We better be. I'm starting to really wonder at this point. Seems like
I think by that time you hit the 2-year mark, you're going to be safely able to release stuff that doesn't work on the last gen systems.
Yeah, should be able
Although,
to.
with the way Microsoft is rolling, like maybe that won't happen and you'll just get really, play it on a potato kind of thing for stuff. Who knows? Who knows what they're planning to do with that?
Yeah, it's pretty
I
crazy.
think it's much more likely to see, we're already seeing PlayStation 5 games that cannot be played on PlayStation 4. We have not seen that happen with Xbox so far, and it seems to be part of their plan to always allow, lower settings to be available. So we'll see.
Can you think of another studio that broke up and then reformed and kept the old name? I can't think of any. A lot of times the rights to that stuff are held by someone else or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of ones that came back together, but they had to think of another name, like Black Isle or, a lot of the Interplay devs had to come back together and name themselves something else.
Yeah, but I've never seen where they named it the same.
Yeah, it's unusual. You get to you keep the name.
So I'm guessing David Doak probably made sure he held on to that all that time.
Yes, he must have registered that under himself or something. Because usually that stuff, especially if you end up selling the company before it disbands, you've lost that name to whatever corporation bought you.
Yep.
But that never happened to Free Radical. So.
Yep. So there you go. Those are the updates. Amy Hennig coming back. She's finally got her studio kicked into full gear. Be cool if we got a trailer at least at E3. Free Radical Design literally just got back together. I would not expect to see anything from the next TimeSplitters for at least next year, at least. And even then, maybe a little too early. But we'll see. But it's good to see people who have been successful and did good work in the past staying in the games industry and coming back to hopefully create relevant content once again. All right, let's move on to our last topic of episode 257. A pleasant surprise from this week, a game that I had very low to zero hopes for.
Oh, actually, let me add one thing there.
Okay.
I didn't put together. Homefront: The Revolution was published by Deep Silver, so they would have seen us if the thing that came out about TimeSplitters being playable in Homefront: Revolution, if that did really cause a spike in sales of that game, Deep Silver would have seen that firsthand.
Yep. Absolutely.
And
that's a good point.
If there was a huge jump in interest from that when that got leaked just on Twitter, that was not even an announcement. That was a developer saying, hey, this is in there somewhere. If someone can go find it, that would be cool. If that caused a spike in sales for this game that's 5 years old, then maybe Deep Silver saw that and was like, oh, people care about this thing. We should get on that.
Yeah, it's possible. And maybe they just reached out to David and he's like, I might be interested in that. And then Deep Silver's like, here's some money. And he's like, oh, I'm definitely interested in that. So
you think you can get this done in less than 7 years? Because that's what we're up on for Dead Island 2.
He's like, I think I can make that happen.
You can handle that, yeah.
7 years?
We made 3 of these things. We know how it goes.
Yep, that's a good point, Matt. Anyway, back onto my pleasant surprise. It is very rare, Matt, that I get surprised by anything in games anymore. Because games are typically shown for the first time with a trailer, and then it just begins this crazy marketing cycle where by the time the game is released, you almost feel like you know too much about each game. In between what the publishers do and the developers do and what the traditional press does and what the influencers do and the streamers do, it's very hard to be surprised by a game anymore. But this game absolutely surprised me. It is called Knockout City. It is a competitive dodgeball game from EA that just released this week. First question I'm sure everyone's going to ask is it free? It is not free over the long term. But right now, it is free everywhere. Until the end of May, you can play the game for free. And then I believe after that, it's going to be like $20 or something like that. Not like crazy high priced. And it is a 3-on-3 competitive dodgeball game. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't check out a ton of coverage on it. I did check out some. But I just figured, it's just going to be this stupid, dodgeball in school where you have a bunch of people on one side of the court, a bunch of people on the other side of the court, and it's just a dodgeball game. What is that sort of old school one that actually where you're actually throwing discs, but it's basically dodgeball? You know what I'm talking about, though?
Like the old arcade game, or
No.
not Super Dodgeball?
No, it's called like Spinners or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought it was going to be...
I know, it's like a Sega thing, and then there's like
I think so.
They brought it back recently.
It looks like an arcade game for sure.
Yeah.
And it just recently was brought back. That's the game I'm talking about. I thought it was going to be like that, but this game is not like that. This is like...
Spin Jammers.
Yeah, that's it. Windjammers.
Windjammers,
Yeah,
that's right.
That's it. This game is like Fortnite with dodgeballs is the best way that I can put it. Also, it is on Game Pass right now, and if you get it on Game Pass, you can have it. You have it forever as long as you have Game Pass. So it's not going away at the end of the month. So you can get it on there as well. And it is a 3-on-3 competitive dodgeball game, but it is set in these urban. In fact, let me just get the B-roll rolling so you can check it out for yourselves. But it is set in these very much like Fortnite-like environments. The art style is very much like Fortnite. It's cartoony. It's flat-shaded. And the structure of the game is a good bit like Fortnite as well. It's all about winning matches, earning gold, and then using that gold to customize your character for the most part. And the concept of dodgeball, it may sound like, I think a lot of people may hear that and they're like, oh, it's probably like a first-person shooter where you have to be really good at aiming. That you do not aim in this game at all. In fact, there is no aiming. There's no fire down or throw down the sights in this game. All the opposing teammates that you're playing against are auto-targeted, and you use the right analog stick to cycle through the opposing team. And it's very snappy and very quick and works really, really well. And you may say, okay, well, if I'm not targeting, like what separates the good players from the bad players? If it's just all auto-targeting, isn't it all luck? And the strategy in this game comes into power shots. So the controls are very simple. Like you use the right trigger to throw, you have a jump button, and you use the left trigger to catch the balls, just like in dodgeball. And you can charge up your shots by how long you hold the throw button. However, once you've pulled down that trigger, you move very slowly. You're basically a sitting duck once you do that. So you have to be smart with not only when you first pull the trigger to throw the dodgeball, but how long you hold it before you release it. Because the longer you hold it, the more power you have, which makes it harder for the opponent to catch, but you're also vulnerable while you're doing it. And this seesaw of strategy is shockingly deep. Once you get into matches, and I'll say this too, by my second match, I felt like I was good at this game and could compete and wasn't focusing so much on how do I do this, how do I do that. I was already focusing on like, okay, I have the basics. How do I get good at this game? And by my fourth or fifth game, I was finishing up on the leaderboard as one of the top people to get people out. So every character can take 2 hits, essentially. You get one that's like a mulligan, and the second time you get hit, you have to respawn. And there is a short timer before the respawn. It's like 5 or 7 seconds or something like that. And then the first team to eliminate 10 of the enemy team wins the round, and then matches are the best of 3 rounds. So the first team to win 2 rounds wins the match. And then after you win, you're rewarded with a bunch of gold and all this other crap that you can go to buy like a hang glide, like a different hang glider or different cosmetics or different like player parts that you can use to construct your characters with. And then adding some more levels of complexity to the game is there's all these different balls. There's balls that you can use to curve shots around corners. There's this ball called a cage ball, where if you run into it, you actually go inside the ball like Samus, and then you can roll around. And there is one caveat to this, that this ball in particular is a little bit annoying, because when you are the ball, you can roll into any teammate, and they're forced to pick it up. So now I'll say this, when they pick up the ball, it is more powerful, and it's immediately fully charged. So there's an advantage to doing it. But being someone who is playing the game and having a teammate roll up to me, when I have somebody sighted up and I've held in the trigger to charge the shot, that perfect amount, and you're just ready to release the shot and they roll into you, and you drop the ball that you had for the cage ball to throw instead. It can be a little bit off-putting and a little strange to kind of get used to at first. Like, and you don't want to be a jerk about it because they're trying to help. They're like, hey, I have this fully charged up ball that's more powerful. Throw it. But sometimes it really can put you in a pinch when you've been engaged with like someone on the other team for a while and you've kind of outwitted them and you're like, there it is. There's my moment to throw. And then this cage ball appears in your hand. You're like, yeah, you jerks. The progression in the game, there are 99 levels across each of the 9 progression tiers. Like I said, this game is not free to play. They're going to charge you money for this eventually once the end of May gets here. But it is all set up already as if it is a free-to-play game, which is a little weird to me. It's like, if I'm going to pay for this, like this whole, like, there's going to be a battle pass. It's already been announced. It's coming. But there is a ton of progression already in the base game. So it's not like you're going to run out of, like, all the progression tiers and stuff to unlock in the first, like, 2 days you play it or whatever. There are different modes, but they're all basically the same base concept. Generally, the modes just switch up like which balls are going to spawn onto the field or not. They don't change the gameplay or the win conditions, which is knock out 10 of the opponents, best of 3 rounds. So the auto targeting, it works great. The auto targeting works from a long distance away. Like you can see someone from like 100 yards, and it will still auto-target them. Now, obviously, they have a lot more time to catch the ball, and that's the other thing. So playing defense in this game is very well balanced. Catching the ball isn't impossible. It's a little bit like batting in a baseball game because there's all these different balls. If they throw a straight one at you, it's pretty easy to catch it. If they throw a curved one at you, or if they just throw the ball slow, it's like a change-up. So you can keep squeezing catch, but if you do it like twice in a row, it doesn't work anymore. So if you're used to someone throwing balls like 1,000 miles an hour and suddenly they throw a slow one, in a lot of cases, you'll burn both of those catches and then the ball will hit you and eliminate you. I have been very pleasantly surprised by this game. I have been having a ton of fun with it. I've been kind of looking as a replacement for Rocket League. I have not been playing Call of Duty lately. I have not been playing League of Legends lately, and that's all because of their communities. The cheating is out of control in Call of Duty. The community is so toxic in League of Legends. I just don't want to deal with either one of them anymore. So I've kind of switched over to playing a lot of Rocket League lately, and I'm burning out on that too because I've come back around to the realization that one bad player in Rocket League ruins the whole team, which is why I quit playing Rocket League back in the day when I was kind of hooked on it. I got tired of having one player who either quits in the middle of a match or just drives around the whole match backwards or is intentionally griefing, trying to score on your team. I just got sick of all that. And I picked up this game, and I'm being serious. I feel like this might be my next, like, short burst addiction. The game that I play when I have 15 or 20 minutes to kill and want to have some fun. As I've got into it and I've earned more XP and stuff that I could use to unlock stuff, I've unlocked a lot of fun cosmetics, and I'm not a big cosmetics person generally in games. I'm like, give me the default guy and I'm good. But a lot of the stuff in this is really fun. They've learned a lot from Fortnite, to be honest with you. You can see its fingerprints all over this game. Let's see, what other stuff do I want to bring up? Oh, there's like, you can fake throw it, which just completely throws you off because it'll actually show kind of like the visual triggers that they're going to throw, and then they can just tuck it, and then you definitely burn both of your catches right away, and they can throw it no matter how they want to, and they're going to take off one of your 2 tabs of life. Just like real dodgeball, if you don't have the ball, it's intense. And when I first started playing, the thing that took me the longest to figure out was where the balls spawn. So when you first start, there's always like 1 or 2 that's kind of right in front of you, but there's 3 people on your team, and if you don't get one of those first couple balls, you're on a hunt to try to find one. If you don't find one, it's intense because they will find you, and all 3 of their teammates will start trying to knock you out immediately because they realize that you can't hurt them, and that's obviously where catching the ball is your only defense. And unlike real dodgeball, catching the ball does not automatically eliminate the person who threw it. And I don't know, I guess your mileage will vary based upon how much you care about real dodgeball. What it does, though, is if you catch a ball, then it's immediately fully charged. So if you fire it back right away, it's going to be a really hard and really fast shot. And that's hard to prepare for, in all honesty, because a lot of times when you throw the ball, you think it's going to land. And when it doesn't land, you're like, oh crap, because if they catch it, they can immediately fire it right back at you. You can also pass balls to a teammate, and if you do that, they're instantly fully charged. I've been playing it for a couple days, and I feel like I am uncovering new strategies and ways to be better at the game all the time. And look, I was someone who was like, what do you mean everything's auto-targeted? How is there any challenge or skill involved? Nothing could be further from the truth. I'm having a blast with this game. It could use a few more maps right now. Right now, I think there's enough balls, but I'll probably get sick of the balls that are in the game here in the next few weeks. But my guess is they're going to keep adding different balls with different behaviors. That is a part of the learning curve, learning to recognize what the ball is that the opponent has, and then immediately also registering what that ball does and being prepared for it and trying to catch the ball or just try to avoid it. And a lot of times you can just kind of turn a corner. When you are being targeted, the whole screen turns red around the edges. So you know when someone's got you sighted in. And a lot of times you can just kind of sprint around the corner and get away from them to avoid them. And then there's a dash as well that can help you get out of trouble at the last minute if you're trying to just get around that corner before they throw the ball. There's just enough of everything to provide enough strategy without the game feeling overwhelming. Like even Fortnite, I feel like a lot of people play that for the first time and they feel overwhelmed. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to get weapons. They don't know where to get good weapons. Literally in 2 matches, you feel like you're in the zone in this game. It is designed very, very well. I do feel like it is designed for a free-to-play game, and when it does eventually turn free-to-play, all that stuff is in there, the stuff that's going to get people to spend money on cosmetics and things like that. I feel like it's only a matter of time. So I am resistant to recommending somebody pay money for this because I don't think it's going to be that long either until it goes free-to-play. But I would say this, at $20, you'll get $20 of enjoyment out of it in a couple days. I'll just be honest with you. So I really like this game, Matt. I've had a ton of fun with it. It came out of nowhere for me. I knew about it, but I had watched a couple trailers and maybe watched one quick gameplay snippet and didn't pay a ton of attention to it. I just thought it was going to be a throwaway. And as it turns out, it's really damn good. I've had a ton of fun with this game. It's Knockout City. It's on everything. It is free until the end of May on everything, on Switch, everywhere. It's on Game Pass right now, and if you wait until after the end of May, you're going to have to pay $20 for it, but I think you'll get that out of it very quickly. So I've had a ton of fun with it. Any questions you have about it, Matt? Will this interest you, do you think?
No.
Why not?
I just don't care about multiplayer stuff at all. Especially not something with no narrative and no anything to it.
There is nothing. The game starts and they put you on a rooftop and you can go and try out the different balls in the game so you understand how they work before you go into a match, and then you can join a match, and that's it. There's a little training thing you can do, and that's all there's in the game. I really doubt there's going to be any kind of a narrative built around this. There is a dumb
and there probably
setup,
shouldn't be. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's just not that kind of thing. It's just I don't care. It's interesting that they made a dodgeball game and didn't just make it into a shooter. I think it's cool that they tried to do something different. I think the art design is a little try hard.
It's generic
to me.
I mean, it looks like Fortnite.
Yeah, it's not definitely not for me.
I didn't think it was for me either, though, Matt, until I played it.
Well, I'm not really even willing to use the hard drive space up on it, so I got other things to do.
I think it was a few gigs. It's really small.
I would hope it's less than 10. Yeah.
I see Vincent in chat says that they actually added a new map today, which is great because they do need more of those, and they added ranked play today as well, which is also good because people are starting to get to the point now where they're pretty good at the game. But I was able to be pretty good at it in short order. There's a lot of people playing it because it's free right now. And it sounds like all the betas that they had were very successful. They had lots of players and a lot of engagement with it. So it could end up becoming the next big thing. I'll be honest with you. I didn't think it was, but something has to take Fortnite's place. And it's not going to be a Fortnite clone. It's going to be something that takes a lot of the elements and the looks of Fortnite and does something different with it. And this game is absolutely that. So
I mean, they are doing, the Rocket League model, which is smart, where just give it away as much as you can and build that player base and get people hooked on it and like go from there, which has proven to work multiple times in the past. So
Yeah.
maybe.
Yep. So I've had a blast with Knockout City. I highly recommend it. If you have it on Game Pass, you'd be crazy not to download it. I think it's worth it for everyone, no matter what platform you're playing on, to download it. It's free, and you can play it for like 2 weeks and figure out whether you want to spend the money on it before you have to. That's a great way to do this stuff in general.
Could use a better name.
What'd you say?
Probably could use a better name.
Yeah. It's not. It doesn't make sense with it. Like, it doesn't tell you what it is right away.
Yeah, I mean, I knew what it was. I remember the trailer, like the announcement was like last year or whatever, or something. But every time someone would mention it or it would pop up in like the feed somewhere, I think they were talking about some kind of like weird indie beat 'em up.
Oh.
Like a Streets of Rage clone or something.
Yeah. The other thing I like about it, too, is it also gives you that feeling from Real Dodgeball where if you're the only one left on your team, and it doesn't happen all that often because people do respawn, but there are times where it's just you and like 2 on the other team or 3 on the other team, and it gives you that same sense of panic, especially if they have the balls and you don't have one. So the first thing you have to do is try to get a ball somehow, and you can either catch it or you can dodge it or hope that they throw it and miss, and you can pick one up. It's just really, really intense and really fun. I'd never found, like, I have yet to find, like, an exploit in the game, or I haven't seen anyone else with find an exploit in the game that kind of cheapens everything. Like, even in Rocket League, once you get at a certain level of that game, like, you can shoot the ball from anywhere and score, and it kind of makes games boring after a while. But I have not seen anything like that so far in Knockout City. And here you're seeing, like, all the stuff that you can unlock. Again, it's very much like a Rocket League or a Fortnite. It's just really built on a backbone of free-to-play, which is why I recommend that you hold off on buying it at full price unless you really love it after you play for free for, like, the 10 days. And the character customization stuff, in my opinion, way better than Fortnite was when it launched. There's, like 15, 20 faces that you can choose from, all different body builds, all different costumes, haircuts, all that kind of stuff. I've just had a ton of fun with it, and so I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it on GameFace to try to get some other people to give it a shot and see if they like it just as much as I do. So there you go. That's Knockout City. Again, it's on everything, free until the end of the month, and then like $20 after that. Let's get to some Q&A. We can answer a few more questions today because we actually wrapped up the show proper a little earlier than normal. I actually felt bad the last couple weeks because there were tons of questions in our chat and we didn't get to like hardly any of them. So today we're going to rectify that. We're going to answer a bunch more than normal. El Guapo 3385. Let me take down these graphics here. Hype level for Thursday's State of Play featuring Horizon Forbidden West. Did you see that, Matt?
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes of gameplay coming up.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I'm not really expecting this game to like reinvent the wheel on this. I mostly just want to play it.
Okay.
Like,
you're not excited to see like the first raw gameplay of it?
Like, I really cannot emphasize how much I'd rather just play something. Footage doesn't blow me up.
You don't get hyped up about stuff anymore, Matt?
Not really, no. You're going to have to really catch me off guard for something like that. I feel like, I mean, look, obviously I love Horizon. It was my favorite game of that year. I played it twice. Not a lot of games that size get a second playthrough from me. But like, it's kind of in a state where I'm just like, yeah, I'm in. Like, just give it to me. Like,
yeah.
I don't need to see anything more.
I think most people probably fall into your camp where they know they're going to get it no matter what, provided it isn't a complete disaster.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to see like, so maybe also like, we've been doing this long enough that gameplay demos do not reflect how I play a video game. Like it's
in a lot of cases anymore, they don't reflect how anyone's going to play the video game. Let's be honest.
Like it's a vertical slice. It's showing how it was like, let's be honest, like except for the really hard stuff. Did I ever put a tripwire down in that game?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Like I used my best arrows and killed them before they could get to me.
Yeah.
Like that's what I did.
I think what most people want to see is like what will be any like new features.
Yeah, I'd like to see the new stuff, some of the new creatures. I'd like to see what why is underwater there? Like what is underwater gonna offer that other stuff doesn't? Is it gonna be more than just diving down and finding the thing? that kind of stuff. I'd like to see if the lip sync is any better. Hopefully they've been focusing on kind of that aspect, the character animation, because that was one of the weak links in the first game. Also, like, I'm not. The other thing I'd be interested in is like kind of the story, but the story of the first game is such a slow burn that I feel like they're not going to tell me anything of value in that regard in preview material. Like, that's a thing you're going to have to learn for yourself playing the game.
Yep.
Because no matter what you do to kind of like quick describe the story of Horizon Zero Dawn, you're not going to succeed because it changed. There's a couple of good twists in that story as to like what's actually going on. So I'm interested to see how they expand that. And if they found a way to expand it that remains surprising and interesting, as opposed to like, that computer is still actually not that dead. Like there's more.
Yeah,
there's more. She got to go. There's more. She's got to go somewhere else. There's more.
I mean, I'm interested in the rest of the mystery. But I don't think we're going to get any hints of that on Thursday.
No, I would think not.
We may get a very loose kind of plot synopsis.
I mean, we've seen like there's like that, and like there's clearly a cult of humans that have sort of like devoted themselves to the bad AI or whatever, the bad computer, and they think that's what the whole franchise is kind of a warning sign against like believing too much weird religious stuff. When you get down to it, like even the good guys are like, oh, like by the end of it, Aloy's just like, yes, Mother is a goddess in a mountain. It's not. It's a machine.
And that's a message our country needs right now.
Yeah.
The QAnon people hopefully will play the new Horizon game. Let's see. Next, Commander Fett. Oh, I should also say thank you to JM Rain, who's handing out all the subs in our chat right now, and to Tiny2K, both you guys coming through once again in our chat. Thank you guys. Appreciate it a ton. Commander Fett, what do you think the effect services like Game Pass will have on mods in PC games? Do you think that Microsoft will let people make mods for Bethesda games like they used to, or will they push them even harder for a mod store? That's a good question.
I mean, I'd imagine it'll be pretty much what we have now, which is, they've got the in-game mod situation like they have for Skyrim and Fallout 4. But you can still mod your install on PC to your heart's content. I have mods installed through the actual mod store on the PC version of Skyrim. But I also have a couple that are not supported by Bethesda's mod store that I've installed through the Nexus mods or whatever they call it. I think it's Vortex or something now. And I got another little thing I put in it that re-enables the achievements, because fuck you, that's why. And I'm still playing the game. I don't care if I put in a mod that makes the fucking tree prettier. I still want my achievements. What the hell are you doing? So I think it'll be pretty much like that. You can't really control what someone does with the install on your own PC. So I think the mod scene will still be there.
Yeah, I think Microsoft has basically said it's going to allow Bethesda to continue doing what it has been doing.
Yeah.
And so I would think that everything's just going to stay the same. Whatever Bethesda has decided it's going to do with mods in the past, it's going to stick with that unless it decides to change. But I don't think Microsoft will force it to change its tactics.
No, I think what you get in Skyrim on the Xbox now already with the Bethesda approved mod store is still going to be what it is. And on PC, you'll be able to do whatever the hell you want, just like always.
Okay. Zet Saber Juno, any upcoming spoiled episodes? You know what? Actually, I thought about doing one for the new zombie film. What's it called, Matt? The one that just debuted on Netflix?
Army of the Dead?
Army of the Dead. Have you watched that yet?
No, I had no interest in watching a 2.5-hour Zack Snyder zombie movie. No.
Well, you made the right call, because it is terrible. It could have been good. It's a heist movie where they have to go into a zombie-infested Vegas to like get a bunch of money out of a vault. And it starts out okay. The premise is fine. And then it's just the dumbest shit. Like, it's another one of those movies that I sit and watch, and I'm like, did anybody watch this before they put it out? Like, did they sit with anybody with an IQ over 60 and watch this movie? Because there are just plot holes everywhere. There's a scene where this girl breaks out of a store window. They already thought she was dead. Like, some jerk had, like, left her to die, and so you thought she was dead. Well, no, like the whole team is escaping. They're like, oh, she's dead, she's dead. She smashes through this glass window with like a couple zombies attached to her, and she's alive, and she's fine. And they all stand there and watch her die for like 5 minutes. They could have run over, pulled the zombies off of her, pulled her, but no, they're like, whoop, too bad, she's gonna die. And they just stand there. It's absurd. Like, and there is stuff all through that movie like that. So I had thought about doing a spoiled on that just for the entertainment value of just picking it apart, and it's so easy. But Matt won't do it apparently, so he won't watch it. So probably not. We haven't forgotten about it.
Zack Snyder already got 4 hours of my life this year. That stupid Justice League piece of shit. So no, I'm done watching Zack Snyder's movies. He's a born second unit director who should never have been let near story or characters. He cannot tell a story to save his life.
He really can't.
I'm glad he's out of the DC thing because I think he will be happier working on his own stuff. Like he deserves to work on stuff that is his own, where he can do whatever he wants. He seems like a decent guy, like as a person. But like, holy shit, I hate everything he's ever made. Like, it's just.
Well, I just gave. How about this? I gave you a mini spoiled right there. The little part of it. But look, certainly.
Well, the only other thing I know is that at one point they play the Cranberries song "Zombie" over a zombie scene without any irony.
Nope.
That song is about the troubles in Ireland. It is not about zombies.
Yep.
And it's just sort of that thing is like Snyder's stuff is such surface level reading. He does that with songs all the time. It's like, oh, this song is in this scene because they say a relevant word to the scene in the chorus. It's like, yes, but it's not about that. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
Like, it's very weird. Like, I don't know. Like, it's not a thing I had any intention of subjecting myself to. No.
But I'll be honest with you, I'm always on the lookout for stuff to do spoiled for. And of course, I have to consider if Matt wants to discuss it or if he's watched it or finished the game. That's the other problem. Spoiled for games, obviously, everyone has to finish the game.
Right.
And that's obviously an issue always.
I mean, most movies I will, but I'm out of Snyder juice for 2021.
I don't blame you. After watching that movie, man, I don't know if I could ever watch another one of his films. I'll just be honest with you. It was that bad. That bad. And this is actually one case, Matt, where it appears that like critics and viewers also realize that it sucks. Like I didn't go to like Rotten Tomatoes and it had like a 9.8 from like users. There's so many.
It's all hovering in like the 70s somewhere, which is
that's still way too high. But it's better than like a lot of times I'll watch a really bad movie and I'll go to Rotten Tomatoes just out of curiosity. And that movie will have like a 9 or higher from the users. Like,
well, yeah, because there's no limit on the user reviews.
There is nothing more unreliable than user reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. The worst.
Because you get like stuff that the weirdos on the internet decide is great. They brigade it for positive, and if they decide they hate it, they brigade it for negative. And the user reviews on that site are completely useless. They reflect nothing except like whatever weird shit Reddit has decided should be the case.
Well, a lot of them are just young kids who just get wowed by special effects or whatever. They don't even think like while they're watching a movie. They just sit there and let it wash over them. So I think that's where a lot of the ratings come from too. Let's see.
Most of it comes from trolls. Like it's a pretty common practice. And Snyder certainly has his cult of fans who whatever floats your boat, I guess. But the thing about the Snyder thing for me is that like, if you want to like them, fine. But like everyone I know who like likes like a lot of his stuff and like I've like had conversations with about it, like they cite stuff that is simply not in the films. And
stuff that like was supposed to be in it but was cut.
Yeah, or no. I mean, just stuff that's not like how Man of Steel has so much heart and it's the most human Superman that's ever. It's like, no, it's fucking not. There's no heart in that movie. Are you out of your mind? Like, it's like it as much as you want, but don't fucking lie to me. Like, what are you talking about?
I've seen the
Christopher Reeves Superman. Like, that's the movie with heart. There is no heart in Man of Steel.
Yeah. Here's one from Erebus Jones. With the Biomutant devs having put out a version of on the PS5 that was considerably visually inferior to the Xbox Series X version due to quote-unquote tech issues, and the new Sniper Ghost Warrior being delayed on PS5 because of quote-unquote tech issues, Is this a coincidence or the beginning of a pattern? I played Biomutant on PS5. It looked great to me. So I don't know what the deal is there.
I don't know. I played it on Series X, and I thought it had a lot of visual problems.
I mean, it has
especially
LOD
close
issues.
up.
Yeah.
But
like foliage will draw in.
Oh, lots of drawing. Yeah. If it's worse on PS5, like that's too bad. Because I don't feel like it's really pushing the envelope too much here.
Well, you got to keep in mind too, these are not next gen versions. This is the PS4 version that I am playing on PlayStation 5. So it just looks a little crisper or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I've watched a good bit of footage of Biomutant. I don't know. I don't know the story, so I don't know how true any of that is. But to answer your question, is this a coincidence or the beginning of a pattern? I don't think so. Like, I don't know why there would be anything about the PlayStation 5 that would make it harder to develop.
It shouldn't be. It's not all that different, really.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. Like, it's not. It is kind of literally, the old adage: once is luck, twice is a coincidence, and 3 times is enemy action.
Yeah.
We're at coincidence level right now.
Yeah.
If we get another game that does that, then I'd say you've got a pattern.
Yep. Let's see if we got any others.
Because they sure as hell don't need another cell processor situation on their hands where it's like the tricky one to develop for, and you got to cut corners or make compromises to get it on there on time.
El Guapo says, I'm probably the only person who likes Snyder Cut. I'm definitely not one of them, and Matt's not one of them.
I mean, a lot of people like Snyder Cut, but I thought it's one of the worst things I've ever seen.
Hey, Matt, did you see the rumors about Disney buying DC?
Yeah, that's nonsense.
I thought it was. But
Complete
I figured
nonsense.
I'd ask you because I knew that you would know.
No.
I saw it on Facebook.
There is no possible way DC
it.
is being sold alongside. DC is going with the rest of Warner's over to Discovery Media because that's where all the IP is. There's no way Discovery paid that much money, and that happened, and they're going to let go the company that does all that stuff. And there's no way, not a chance in hell.
Okay. I just saw it. It was a lot of people were sharing it on Facebook, and so I figured
it does look like Amazon's going to buy MGM. So
why would Amazon do that?
Because they want a prestige movie studio, and that would also give them James Bond. So No Time to Die might be the last theatrically released James Bond movie.
Huh. So they would do that just to load up Amazon Prime with content?
They'd have IP to work with. They would have a lot of backlog, a lot of back catalog to put on there exclusively. It would be a boon for their streaming. Yeah.
Okay.
And it would let them take their prestige, the movies they do every year, do a prestige thing and put the MGM lion in front of them, which is a known brand for movie studios, and they could run them in theaters briefly and under the MGM brand and call it, eligible for Oscars. Like it's, Amazon desperately wants to be taken seriously as a content producer. So I think that would just be sort of the direction they'd go with it.
Amazon not really known for creativity. Let's just be honest. Even despite
no, but
all
they're
their
making
originals.
hard plays. They're about to put that Lord of the Rings show out, and like they spent $1 billion on that.
Yeah, that's insane.
Like they are. In the next couple of years, they're going to come in hard trying to be an original content creator, and we'll see how they do. But like. It's probably going to go better than Luna does.
I would agree with that probably.
I'm just going to keep kicking Luna until it comes out and crashes and burns like Stadia did.
All right. That's going to do it for GameFace episode 257. Thanks to everybody on chat who asked all the great questions to end the show and for sticking around until the end of the episode. If you're listening to the show on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or if you're watching the show on YouTube for free after a 4-day delay, please check us out at patreon.com/sifted. That's SIFTD without the E. And drop us a pledge for just $4 a month. You get all our content early. Factor, you get it a week early. Everything else, 4 days usually. We really need it. We could really... It would really help us produce more content. One of our goals on there right now is to do a second episode of GameFace per week. But we have to hit the goal before we can do it. Otherwise, we can't afford it. So check it out. Again, patreon.com/sifted. Also, another reminder, next week's show, streaming live on Wednesday instead of Tuesday. It will be at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern as usual, but it will be a day later. I'll try to remember to come in here because people don't always get the message. And when we don't do the show at Tuesday at 1 o'clock, there's a lot of people who just show up in our chat and they're like, what the hell is going on? I'll try to remember to do that next week at 1 o'clock to let people know that the show isn't happening. But again, it is happening on Wednesday instead. And if you can't afford to help us, you can always hook up Twitch Prime. Again, that's down in the description here on YouTube. And while I'm talking about YouTube, why don't you like it, subscribe it, ring the bell, all that crap that'll help us. I don't really know how it helps us, but everyone says it does, so please do it. But if you can't afford to help us in any way, there's always Twitch Prime, and you can do that. Or you can just make sure you watch the ads on YouTube. There's always little things that you can do to help Sifted, even if you don't have any money or any finances to help us in that way. And if you are one of those people, make sure you follow Sifted on Twitter, @SiftedGames. Every time we publish something for free on YouTube or anywhere else, we post it there. You'll know right away. If you want to find me on Twitter, I am @Dinfire. If you want to find Matt on Twitter, he's @MKyle. And if you want to find Vincent on Twitter, who you heard from a little earlier, he is @VincentSifted. So on behalf of Matt and Vincent, thanks again for tuning in. Thanks for your support. Much love. GameFace is up and out.